tremblante et moi, une âme qui vit de toi. Je voudrais dire merci pour ce moment qui me grandit. C'est comme si je n'étais jamais né. Avant cet enfant nouveau-né, balayer, balayer, balayer les blessures de mon passé. Tout paraît beau, tout paraît léger, comme si le monde allait changer. C'est la vie, la vie, la vie, oh, la vie est. C'est du mystère, de la magie. Je me sens père, ça me ravit. C'est la vie, la vie, la vie, oh, la vie est. Elle est bien la divine amie, me donne des ailes et des envies. C'est la vie, la vie, la vie, oh, la vie est. Elle est bien la divine amie, nous dévisage et nous sourit. C'est la vie, la vie, la vie, oh, la vie est. Elle est bien la divine amie, nous dévisage et nous sourit. C'est la vie, la vie, la vie, oh, la vie est. Cette présence qui fait aussi une existence de ma vie. C'est la vie, la vie, la vie, oh, la vie est. Cette présence qui fait aussi une existence de ma vie. C'est la vie, la vie, la vie, oh, la vie est. C'est du mystère, de la magie. Je me sens père, ça me ravit. C'est la vie, la vie, la vie, oh, la vie est. Elle est bien la divine amie, me donne des ailes et des envies.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thanks for being here. Can everybody hear me? Great. Well, I know it's a commitment to invest this much time in a meeting and a retreat, but we're very grateful for your time, attention, and dedication this morning to ensuring that we have a productive day. It's safe to say at this point that our theme for the day will focus heavily on the power of equity and inclusion in developing a high-performing culture for United Way of Tarrant County. I know we each bring unique lived experiences to the table, and hopefully combining ideas and carving out our direction, we can improve the opportunities for our organizational success. I hope, I noticed this morning in logging into the Star Telegram, hopefully, if you haven't seen it already, there's a nice article front and center on the homepage about our upcoming work in 76104 that highlighted Leah and staff. So when you have a chance, look at that. But, I think this organization truly is at the forefront of the community, and what we're hoping today is to look at ways to make it even better and more successful. We're going to focus on two distinct areas: one operational in nature, and the other is about our culture, but also heavily influences our operations as well. I hope that you will join me in truly plugging into the discussion. Truly plugging in and engaging in each of the upcoming sessions in racial equity training. And let me just say a quick word about this particular topic. I know this can at times be uncomfortable, but I am a firm believer that it is our responsibility as a board and leading nonprofit in the community to set the example of how to move boldly forward. And that won't happen unless and until we do more to learn and grow together. If you haven't noticed already, there's a link in the chat box for us all to click. Please click on the link and share what your personal goals are for today's retreat. We're hoping to capture your thoughts and then make sure we visit those particular ideas throughout the day. Thanks again for being here and spending the time and committing the time to be here today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Leah King.
Thank you, James, and thanks everybody for being here. I don't know if we have that link in there just yet, but it'll be there any second. But it is important for us to hear just what the goals that you have personally for today, and we're going to talk through some of what we intend to have occur as well. So just to get us started, I'd love to see who's on, because when we're in this type of view, I can't see everybody, and I don't know that you guys can see who else is here. So go ahead. Fill in the chat, tell us your name, and just what role you play with us at United Way, whether you're staff or a board member, if you're a committee chair, something like that. That way we can all get a feel for who is here and participating today. So I'm gonna go ahead and type in Leah King, if I can type. Go ahead and tell us who is here and what you do. Hey, Steve, it's good to see you. Jennifer's here, Tom is on. Oh, I love it. It's good to see everybody chiming in. And I know that, like James said, this is a commitment of time, but we want to definitely be sure that we are able to hear from you. This day will be heavily focused on us hearing from those of you who are on and able to join us today. Before we hop into what the objectives are, I did want to say a special thank you to so many people who have helped behind the scenes. You notice that we have a professionally run retreat today, and that is in huge thanks to our friends at the meeting squad. So you'll see behind the scenes here, a fellow board member, Carlo, who is just like jack of all trades and helps us constantly with so many things. So thank you, Carlo. And then his partner, Bill Alexi. Bill is on. And so thanks to the two of you. Also, we've had the pleasure of working with Tracy Williams. She has definitely helped us to get this organized and in a way that we hope makes it fun for all of you that are participating today. And then also we have our tremendous staff and speakers for today. So you'll hear more from Shannon Fletcher, who's your chair of diversity. You'll hear from Christy Odom, who is your chair, your community investment cabinet chair. And so just thanks to everybody. Now, what are we going to do here today? Today, we intend to strengthen the relationship amongst the board members and senior staff. And so when I say we want to hear from you, this is not just us saying, oh, we want to hear from you. This is going to be an engaging session all the way through. We also want to be sure that we are fostering an environment of openness and communication amongst board and staff. So you'll please take note, especially those of you who are board members, of those on our staff that type their names in so that you can become familiar with who we are, what our respective roles are, and how we can help make sure that your time serving with us on the board is fulfilling and as impactful as you would like it to be. And then lastly, we plan to make sure that we're going to cultivate understanding and agreement of why diversity and equity and inclusion is a necessity for our organizational success. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see that we also are going to be broken down into two groups and participate in concurrent breakout sessions. The sessions will include discussion about updates to the allocations process that staff is recommending and why, and that's going to be led by Christy Odom and our Vice President of Community Investment, Chris Alvarado. And we'll also have a dive into the role of the Diversity Committee, along with gathering your insight on a couple of key questions. That's going to be led by Shannon Fletcher and then supported by our Chief Human Resources Officer, Beth Watson, and yours truly. We'll come together to participate in a racial equity training to both educate and inform ourselves, but also make sure that we are meeting the compliance requirements that United Way Worldwide has set for us back in the summer. And along those lines, I hope that you had a chance to review some of the pre-reads, particularly the article on curb cuts. That is something that will help the discussion in the diversity session that you will participate in to go more smoothly. And of course, we're going to have a lot of fun, a lot of laughter, some friendly competition along the way. And so before we move on, let me just take a quick pause and see if there are any questions or comments on anything that you have heard thus far. If so, just type them into the chat and let us know if there's anything pressing on your mind as we are hopping into our packed day. And 3, 2, 1. Okay, so how about we go to the next slide and just do a quick reminder for all of us, and we will hope that we can reduce the number of times that we speak or attempt to speak when our mic is on or not on. Usually, if I'm trying to speak, I'm muted, and if I'm not trying to speak, I'm not, and I'm making noise. So try to remember to keep your mic on mute when you're not speaking. If possible, keep your webcam on as much as you can. And if there's something that you want to be sure that we capture, but it's not appropriate for that time, go ahead and either put it in the chat for everybody to see, or if you want to send a direct message, definitely feel free to do that. Be patient as you can with any tech challenges we might come up with. I doubt that we'll have any because we have professionals helping us to make sure that this is a smooth and fun day. And above all, please, 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 we really implore you to participate and to give us as much input as you can. So now on to that thing that I said about friendly competition. We're going to pose a series of 9 multiple choice questions to you, and we'll give you plenty of time to read everything. I'm going to read the questions, but we want to test your knowledge as board members about United Way of Tarrant County. So I don't have a good Wink Martindale voice. That's our CFO's job, Jeff Allison. He's Wink Van Dollar, but Wink Van Dollar is we banish him in between the times that we have our internal campaign. So while he is on an island somewhere, I'm going to do my best to do this trivia with you. So what we're going to do, we're going to have these questions come up, and you're going to answer the question, but I need you to keep a track of which answers you have, because we're not able to give you the answer right now. We're going to tell the winner later on, and the winner will have some prizes. So first question is this: what's the mission statement of United Way of Tarrant County? Is it A, to bring resources, donors, and partners to ensure a brighter future for all Tarrant County? Is it B, to bring together resources and create partnerships that ensures opportunity for all in Tarrant County? Is it C, to provide resources and opportunities that create welcoming community where all Tarrant County residents can thrive? Or is it D, to provide leadership and harness resources to solve Tarrant County's toughest social challenges? All right, you have got just a few more seconds to answer. So pick which one you think it is. I'll give you about 15 more seconds. You study long, you study wrong, as my grandmother used to say. She used to say that about poker, but we can say it about this too. All right, 10 more seconds, and we're gonna go on to our next question. All right, in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, on to question number 2. What year were we founded? And by the way, let me just remind you, please keep a track of the answer that you selected, A, B, C, or D. So what year were we founded? 1918, 1921, 1922, or 1925? All right, looks like we have about half of you that have voted by now. So go ahead and pick which one: 1918, 1921, 1922, or 1925. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. On to the next question. How many people do we typically serve in a year? Do we typically serve 250,000, 300,000, 450,000, or 550,000? And by the way, if I didn't say this before, staff should not be voting on these things. This is only for our board members. So if you have been playing along as staff, keep going, it's okay. But just know staff is not going to win anything here. This is going to be up to our board members. So how many people does United Way of Tarrant County typically serve in a year? 250, 300, 450, or 550,000? All right, we've got about 5 more seconds, so go ahead and pick one. In 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, next question. How many people have been served by United Way of Tarrant County since COVID started? 250, 300, 450, or 550,000? How many people have we served since COVID has hit? 250, 300, 450, or 550? You were hoping you could win, Kentisha? Yeah, I know. You probably already have what we're going to give away anyway, so we'll see. All right, 5 more seconds. In 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. How many years has James Powell been on the United Way of Tarrant County Board? Is it 6 years, 9 years, 10 years, 11 years, or since the Cold War? 6 years.
Who slipped that last one in there?
I know somebody snuck that one in. I didn't even know that was in there. All right, 6, 9, 10, 11, or since the Cold War. How long has James been around? All right, so we've got.
Note that too long was not an option.
All right. 3, 2, and 1. All right. What year did the office in Arlington open? Was it 1979, 1980, 1985, or 2000? What year did the United Way of Tarrant County Arlington office open? 79, 80, 85, or 2000? This is a tricky one. I will admit to you that I bet you Regina knows. I hope so. Don't tell anybody, Regina. Yeah, you can't see. Now you're going to have people coming to you to say, okay, tell me what was the answer? 79, 80, 85, or 2000? All right, we've got 5 more seconds. Don't you PM her. All right, next question. This too is going to be a little bit of a tricky question, but all right, let's go on to the next question. What direct service does our area agency on aging not provide? Meal delivery, Medicare benefits counseling, long-term care family advocate, or caregiver and respite advice? Which direct service does AAA not provide? All right, how we doing here? About half of you have voted. Yeah, this can be a tricky one. This can be a tricky one. All right, let's say 5 more seconds. 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, 2 more questions, guys. How many women chief executives has United Way of Tarrant County had since its founding? 1, 2, 3, or 4? How many women have held the CEO role since the founding of the organization? 1, 2, 3, or 4? This is a good question. And this gets to our overall theme, right? Overall theme. All right, 5 more seconds, guys. 1, 2, 3, or 4. All right, or 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, last question. How many people of color has had the organization? Let me back up and ask this question intelligently. How many people of color has the organization had as its chief executive in its history? 1, 2, 3, or 4? 1, 2, 3, or 4? All All right, looks like we have almost 70% who have voted on that so far. We've got 5 more seconds. All right, and 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right. Thank you so much for playing along. So what we're going to do is announce the winner after our first session. So hopefully, if there were some questions that came up that you were unsure of and you feel like you probably should know the answer to them, that's okay. We'll make sure that we address as many of them as possible. We'll certainly go through all the answers to be sure that you're all very clear on what they are, and make sure that you know what you should and need to know about the organization that you're serving, and we are doing our part at bringing those details to you. So we're going to move on to our first session, but before we break, I want to turn it over to Shannon Fletcher because she's going to share some interesting information about our board. So over to you, Shannon.
Good morning. Thank you, Leah, so much for that introduction. And thanks to James for his leadership, as well as Leah. I'm so excited about this morning, and I just want to welcome everyone in this pivotal and crucial moment that we have as a board and as an organization. And thank you all for your leadership. Professionally, I work for the Tarrant County Criminal District Attorney's Office as Chief of Staff. I've been an active volunteer for United Way of Tarrant County for over 6 years, and I'm currently serving as a bonus year of service in the role of diversity chair. I'm scheduled to roll off in June, so I will miss my service formerly with you all, but look forward to serving in other capacities as duties are assigned. Right now, as I mentioned, I serve as the chair of the diversity committee. And with the heightened attention to diversity and equity and inclusion has received since the murder of George Floyd, it's really important that we have a role in this space to ensure that United Way of Tarrant County has a strong foundation of racial equity, not only for its own business practices, but also for the methods and manners and policies and procedures for making investments in our local community. We love our community. We are going to have a long-term stay in our community, and we're taking a leadership role is expanding as we move forward. In order to understand who we are as a board, I have asked staff to send you all a survey to help us give an idea of our board composition. And this morning, I wanted to share the results of this with you. And so we'll go to the next slide. Thank you to all of you who actually participated in our survey. We had 33 out of 41 of our board members reply. That's a little over 80%. And so we do encourage those who did not and was not able to complete the survey to please just shoot Beverly a response. And we really do want to capture the full demographics of our board and composition. This will allow us to really identify gaps on our board in various areas. But today we're going to share with you the results. Next slide. So you can see as far as gender, our board is pretty split between male and female with a slight less edge to male board members, but pretty all we are pretty quite even in this area. Next. This slide deck shows our age composition, where the majority of our age demographics falls within 35 to 50 years old, with next 51 to 65. There might be an opportunity for over 65 where we don't have as much representation in this area, as well as under 35. We do realize under 35 is a unique demographic possibly for a board level commitment, but this is obviously an opportunity for us to engage our younger demographics in committees and service areas within United Way of Tarrant County. Next slide, please. We did ask the question about education, and most of our respondents had a graduate degree, closely followed by a bachelor's degree. And there were a few with some certifications that were specialized areas of industry. Next slide. We wanted to capture our LGBT community. And so in this area, we do have a couple of board members that identify in this demographic, with the majority identifying as heterosexual. Next slide. So when we ask as far as race and ethnicity, we ask, what do you identify as? And the majority, over 76% identify as white or Caucasian, with next with representation for Hispanic and Black, both at about 12%. We do not have representation on the board in the Asian demographic, as well as no one had identified as biracial, but all listed their ethnicity. Next. We wanted to ask you, what is the board's commitment to our mission and service? Next slide. In terms of issues of particular importance, it looks as if it was really important that we have, as far as board commitment is related to education, closely followed by basic needs, then financial stability, and health continue to really is what move and drives our board members the most. This is significant because it really shows us if what the work that we're doing as staff, it lines up as far as what our board vision lies. Next slide. And most of us feel that we contribute from a strategic perspective, but also with an eye on the future. And so we have a lot of strategic thought leaders as members of our boards, but definitely with the way of contingency planning, succession planning, but also for future goals and strategic planning. We do have a commitment to where we go from here. Next slide. We are the best equipped and willing to connect United Way staff and community leaders, resources, assets, and content experts. And this is really where the board comes in. We can always maximize the work, and our staff is dedicated and committed. But in order to maximize their efforts, it is really significant that we utilize our resources and connections within our local community to expand our reach as an organization. And next slide. And finally, we're able to contribute in the areas of policy, entrepreneurship, leadership, and government. I want to share this with you before we head into our respective breakout sections, because we should keep in mind where we are seeking to grow in this organization and determine if we have the resources and access needed to get us there. I do want to thank you all again for your time and commitment to completing the survey. And once again, if your schedule did not allow you to complete the survey, please reach out to Beverly at your earliest convenience so that we can have 100% representation and responses from the members of our board. Thank you all again for your engagement. And Leah, I'm going to send it back over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Shannon. And one thing I wanted to share is first, just a thank you to those of you that did have the opportunity to complete the survey. We're going to work to continue just as on the staff side to ensure that we get to 100% so that we have a very clear view. So some of the areas where we show as zeros, they may or may not change. We'll see how that shakes out, and we'll bring that survey information back to Shannon and the diversity committee, and then they'll bring it to you once we have final numbers on that. And then also, I recognize all of you and the roles that you play in your respective organizations, and understand that you may have to tap in and out occasionally throughout the day. That's cool. We're recording the sessions, but also we're taking notes, and we'll be sure that overall we're able to bring all of us up to the same place in terms of our knowledge, understanding, and outcomes, and any action items that come as a result of what we're doing here today. So before we jump into our breakout sessions, I want to just ask the meeting squad team to do their magic. They're going to send us to breakout rooms, and we're going to see everybody back here in about an hour. So what'll happen, you'll have a 50-minute session of breakout and then a 10-minute break after that, and then we'll all meet back here at 10:30. So, all right, meeting squad, on to you.
All right, folks, if you're still in the room, there should be an opportunity for you to click on a button, or you should be sent. If you're still in the room now, that means I'm not sure. Let's see, iPad. Okay, there's Sean. I'm going to send. Sean, is that you on iPad 41?
Yes, it is.
All right, let me send you. We're going to put you in the group 2. So let me send you there right now. through the magic of Zoom. Let's see, we're going to put you there. And then Justin, let's see, we've got, Justin, would you rather go to diversity or community investment?
I'm not picky because I'm only going to be able to be around for about 15 more minutes.
Okay, how about we put you in community investment? I'm going to send you over there.
Sounds good.
All right, and Mr. Martin, Martin, would you like to go to diversity or community investment? Do you have a preference? I think you're on mute, Martin. Let me ask you to unmute here. Oh, okay, you're on. All right, Martin. I think if you should have an invitation to join breakout session 2. Do you see an
Yeah, I do,
invitation?
Carlo. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
that's no worries. No
I
worries.
apologize.
No worries. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
I think you just got to click on join, Martin. If there's a little box that popped up, the host is inviting you. I think you're back on mute. Sorry, I can't hear you. Or on your iPad.
Yeah, it did, and I thought I hit it. Maybe I didn't.
You know what? I'm going to move you to breakout 1 and then back to breakout 2. I'm going to try that.
Okay.
All right.
Carlo, what's breakout 2 about again? I'm sorry.
That is community investment.
Okay.
Let's see. Nothing. Are you on an iPad?
Yes.
Okay. It's a little tricky. You know what? Is there a little somewhere on that iPad? Can you scroll, or there should be an invitation for you to join the meeting?
Let me see. Would that be in meeting settings, you think?
No, it should have popped up. So it may be hiding
It
underneath
did pop
there.
up. It did pop up, and I thought I hit it, but maybe I did. Maybe hit the wrong button.
Let me see if
I am certainly technologically challenged.
let me see if I
There's
can
no doubt
find
about that.
breakout room iPad. Zoom. I'm trying to troubleshoot here to see. Martin, your best bet might be to log out and log back in. I can
Okay.
assign you to that room, and then you can hit the join, because it tends to get hidden on iPads and phones. It's a little hard, and I'm not sure exactly where it is on your iPad.
Okay.
I'll try that.
Let's see here. Yeah, I'll log out and then I'll log back in.
And then I'll send you right over. Kenesha out of diversity.
I'm back.
All right. Let's do, okay. I'm going to send you to, all right. I'm going to send you to group 2.
There we go.
Go for it. I was helping Martin Noto, period. He had some problems with technology, period.
For several years now, going back. Shannon and Regina Williams and I had the privilege of going to it last summer. For those of you who were in a board meeting about a year plus ago, we reported out on it. But United Way Worldwide has really been working on in this space for a long time. As Shannon talked about, the social justice issues that have come to the forefront over the past year have really expedited this, but we're excited that we can be a part of this come up. So all of that said, our diversity committee, Shannon and the committee are really working closely with us, and we're excited about it in order to ensure that all of the membership requirements are met by the July 2021 deadline, and so that we can determine how we're going to move forward to keep all of that at the forefront of what we do. So we will continue to keep the full board informed and engaged as we complete our work. And that's really what we're doing in this session today, is we want to hear from you as to how we're going to carry out this work. So back to you, Shannon.
Thank you so much, Beth. So what exactly is the Diversity Committee, and what are we charged to do, and who sits on the committee? Well, the Diversity Committee shall consist of the chair, which is myself, and at least 5 committee members who are appointed by the board chair. Current committee members now include James, of course, our board chair, me, and then also as well included our City of Fort Worth Council member, Gina Bibbins, who's been a longstanding member, as well as Stephen Baldwin, a Tarrant supervisor with Encore. And our board members include Carlo Capua, Joseph DeLeon, Marketing Daja, who is the JPS Director of Diversity and Inclusion. And I believe one of our newest board members has just joined us, Jay Jackson, with Office of Commissioner Precinct 2, Devin Allen. And directly from the bylaws, it reads that the committee shall work to establish the corporation as a resource for promoting diversity in Tarrant County. The committee is charged with developing policies, guidelines, programs that support the corporation's commitment to diversity. We are serious about this space. It includes inclusion, multiculturalism, as expressed in our mission statement and our diversity statement. The committee shall ensure that the corporation provides a climate and culture that fosters and promotes and encourages social interactions and support and appreciation and celebration of our differences. I think we're seeing this even more so now with the state of our country and our environment. And so we are just calling on you to see what is the role of United Way of Tarrant County's role in equity and diversity space. The Diversity Committee and Governance Committee shall also be responsible for nominating individuals to serve on the board of directors who meet the qualifications as otherwise set forth in these bylaws. These committees shall select for election at the annual meeting a list of nominees for diversity for the board of directors, as well as a list of nominees for officers selected from individuals serving as directors or nominated for election as directors of the corporation. These committees shall file with the president not less than 10 days in advance of the date of the annual meeting as report, including its recommendations for the first list of nominees for directors and recommended slates. So that's a lot to say, but overall, we did want to provide you the overall mission so that you know the governance of why the purpose and mission of the Diversity Committee. What was unique is what Beth mentioned earlier is in terms of when we attended the Equity Summit about a year or so ago, it was very unique that we were one of the few actually United Ways across the country that actually had a diversity committee. And I want you to know our commitment to diversity, that not only is it a member of our board, but also a member of the executive committee, which is pretty significant in the work that we do. So now that we're on the same page as far as responsibilities of the diversity committee, We are ready to take a deeper dive. We are wanting to really ensure that we're on the same page with the definitions and concepts. This is really important because we established United Way of Tarrant County as a community resource to promote diversity within Tarrant County. We also need to confirm that we have our own policies and our own practices in place. Only then will we have the credibility to effectively lead the discussion in the community. So at the moment right now, I do want to just take a few moments in the chat to just give one word or a couple of statements for everyone in this committee and this breakout session right now. What do you feel is United Way of Tarrant County's role for us as a board in leading racial equity within our community? Just take a few minutes just to put some words in the chats. Do you feel that we lead this space? Are we the biggest champion in our community? As a board, what do you feel is our role as board members to lead racial equity within United Way of Tarrant County, but more significantly within our local community? So in a moment, we're going to split off into two groups and focus on specific areas. But before we do that, let's level set on some definitions and then quickly move into a couple of speed rounds. Equity. This is something you hear as a lot. You hear a lot about the words, but many times people don't really know the true definition. I do want to acknowledge Beth has identified convener. James has said that we're setting the tone for standards that inform partner organizations. That's awesome. Barbara Williams said that we lead by example. As Carlo says that many boards are not microcosms of the community that they serve. That's right. We really do want to represent the communities that we serve. That's at a board level, staff level, and every facet of our organization. So what is the definition of equity? Equity is the intentional inclusion of everyone in society. Equity is achieved when systematic, institutional, and historical barriers based on race, gender, sexual orientation, and other identities are dismantled and no longer predict socioeconomic, education, and health outcomes. Think about the article that we sent as a pre-read about curb cuts. When people in wheelchairs and other mobility challenges advocated for years for curb cuts, once they became commonplace, the benefits were felt by everyone. Mom and dads pushing strollers, moving companies, and even the kids on the skateboards. This is the essential point about equity. It's not about handouts or special treatments as echoed in the article. Rather, it's an investment in the broader well-being of our society. And that to me defines equity and where we want to be as an organization. When it comes to the definition of diversity, next slide. Diversity recognizes that each person is unique and groups of individuals reflect multiple dimensions of differences, including race, ethnicity, gender, class, sexual orientation, age, physical abilities, religious beliefs, political beliefs, and cognitive styles. Of course, there are several additional definitions that are relevant to this work, but for our purpose today, these are the two that we will focus on. And this is our goal, to be a champion in both the areas of equity and diversity and inclusion for all. All right, now we're going to split off. Half of us will be discussing United Way's commitment, community investment practices, and the other half of us will be discussing policies and best practices around HR, marketing, and procurement. When both speed rounds have concluded, we'll be moving into the break. Meeting squad, I turn it over to you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Shannon. So let's do it this way. Leah, maybe I could use your assist on this. We're going to keep half of the board in this room for your topic, and remind us your topic's going to be, you're going to talk specifically about which topic, and then half will go back into the main session.
Yes, so my topic is going to be equity around community investment.
Okay, and so the other topic, Shannon will lead back in the main session. And so Leah, maybe if you could help me, it seems like I think we have about 12 board members, and I believe the rest are staff or guests in this room. Help me, let's identify 6 board members to go into the main session to work with Shannon, and the rest will stay here. And board members, if you hear your name, All you have to do is at the bottom right of your screen, there should be a button that says leave room. If Leah mentions your name, just leave the room. Don't leave the meeting. You'll be out of the meeting forever, and unless you come back. So if Leah mentions your name, just leave the room, leave the breakout room. You'll go back to the main session. And Shannon, you can also leave room now if you'd like, and welcome people as they enter the main session for your room.
Yeah, so, and Carlo, Shannon, you go to whichever room you like. Stay in the community investment, or if you want to go to the policies, Beth is going to lead the discussion on the HR policies. Let's go with Beth, be James and Brian, and how about also Gloria and Barbara? And then let's see, that's 4, right? We need 2 more. Is that right?
Well, and I'll go out too, because I'm going to help in the main session. So you can count me
perfect.
as a board member also.
Okay. And then how about Jennifer? So that'll give 6.
Got it. All right. So I'm going to duck out. If you need anything, there should be a little button that says ask for help at the bottom, or you can text me and we should be good to go.
Oh yeah, and I realized I said James, and we have James Sharp and James Powell. So how about we send Powell to Beth's session, and we leave Sharp in this session?
Cool. I think
Hey
that actually,
guys, I'm trying to leave the room, but I can't. I only have one option to leave, but I think if I hit that leave, it will take me out of the meeting.
So Gloria, I'll move you back. I think I can move you to the main session since you're on a phone. Let me see what I can do for you, and if not, I'll text you.
Gracias.
Okay? De nada.
Bye.
The purpose, so the overall picture for today is we have our diversity breakout session and our community investment breakout session. And then within our diversity breakout session, we actually have the same, but it's all about diversity, because we're in this session right now, we are going to be talking about, and we staff are really looking to draw out from you all your expertise and experiences in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, how you've seen that play out professionally, personally, and particularly within your organizations, to find out what practices you've seen put in place that have worked really well, those that haven't, how you've done that, and all of that surrounding internal HR practices, as well as marketing and procurement. We're really looking to, as we strive to be leaders in this space, how are we looking at our vendors? How are we looking at the people that we're providing money to in the community and saying, are they doing what they can for diversity, equity, and inclusion within the Metroplex? So does that make sense from an overall view? Any questions as to what I'm looking for from you guys today? All right, Kantisha, Shannon, Carlo, I was just trying to kind of give them an overview as we had you come in. So I'm not quite sure when you joined, but I'm so glad y'all are here. I had to move my screen. So this morning, I think, Carlo, I don't think we really need to put that slide up. It just says that we're looking at marketing, HR, and procurement practices. So why don't we just start with all of you, feel free to unmute and chime in. As I said at the beginning, Kantisha is going to be our great note taker and capture your experiences that you would like to share. But I'm really interested to know in either your current organizations or where you've been before, what are some DE&I initiatives that have been put into place that you felt worked really well? And I'd ask you to clarify there how long they've been in place, if they're long-standing practices or if they're more recent. But what are some things you've seen done that you think were done really well?
This is Jennifer. Can you hear me?
I can, thanks.
So I work for the city of Arlington. One of the things that we did, I think about 6 years ago is we created an internal executive education program that we worked with. And so it was meant to really bring individuals along and get them ready to be executives. So like our next level department leaders or significant division leaders. And it was a year long, and we taught some practical skills about like how to do things, kind of like the culture in the organization, like how do you present to council, but also like how do you work the budget process. So some really like good tools we really focused on. And we were pretty selective in who we chose for that. Like we looked at ADs, assistant directors, like up and comers, but we purposefully made it a group that was very diverse because we didn't have a lot of diversity in our upper ranks. And we've had a number of those folks who are now leading our departments, and now they may have made it there anyway. But the good thing about that is it sort of like marked them or tagged them to say like, okay, like you're on this track. And so it changed something in their mind maybe, and it signaled to the organization that like these are the next folks. The one disadvantage I will say though is that it as we've talked about, it sort of like lights a fuse. And if that person doesn't promote up to be a director, they're probably going to find another opportunity in another organization or a city in our case, which isn't terrible. Like we think any kind of a promotion, our philosophy now is like any promotion is good. Like it's good for that person to get, even if it's a director job in another city. But that was something that we did that we think has been successful, and we've continued it. So I would add that. So I guess internal executive development was helpful for us.
Wonderful. Thank you. Great idea.
Thank you, Jennifer, for that. Beth, I'll give an example of my company. And to be very transparent, we are going through growing pains as relates to D&I. We were very intentional 5 years ago about the recruitment and hiring of diverse candidates. And so with that, we did strategic outreaches and for those that don't, just a memory, I'm with the Tarrant County Criminal District Attorney's Office. And so we realized we were very underrepresented with minority prosecutors. And so we did active recruitment at our Black and minority strong population law schools. And so we checked the box with diversity that we were able to hire a lot of these diverse prosecutors, but unfortunately, our retention sucked. We realize now as they're leaving, they're saying that they did not feel welcome. They felt that they did not feel an environment that was inclusive, and they were not considered for promotion. So to Jennifer's point, we are now looking, okay, well, diversity was one part of it, but then inclusion is another piece for us to really maximize our D&I strategies. And so we have just introduced a mentorship program to connect our seasoned professional attorneys with our younger prosecutors to do, just as Jennifer mentioned, learn about more leadership track opportunities, how to take on more high level criminal cases such as capital murders and ultimately death penalty cases so that they can have that experience and exposure. And so, and we feel that if they're connected with someone in the organization, then they feel more included. They're invited to lunch. We don't want it to be where just the all Black attorneys go to lunch and all the white attorneys go to lunch. We really are trying to be more inclusive and intentional about our work environment as well. And so now we're bringing in a development coach to really drill down a little bit more. One of my initiatives was I wanted to do more diversity trainings within the office. And again, it checked the box that we were doing diversity training, but we did not have any subsequent follow-up. And so with that, we were having these high level topics and having these raw discussions, but then it was like, okay, and then now what? And we realized, and honest, that's beyond our skill set. So now we're partnering with the people that are trained in that space, because I think James said it so well. These are uncomfortable conversations and dialogue. And so you do need professionals that can really navigate that throughout the process. And so that's the next step of our D&I space. And then as regards to cases, we are evaluating, are there some crimes that we are providing certain sentences or plea offers based on race? This is not capital murder because murder is just egregious, right? And it's very clear. But it's more the discretionary level crimes, such as if it's a low level misdemeanor or marijuana, is there more discretion that more minority defendants are getting tougher sentences? And so we're now evaluating that piece as we look within even more so on things that are more discretionary.
Wonderful. Thank you for that broad overview, Shannon. Y'all are working on a lot. That's wonderful.
This is Barbara. I think with our firm, it begins with attitude of the leaders. We have a management committee of 9 people, and there are 4 women, myself included. I'm the Caucasian woman. The other 3 women are Hispanic. We have 5 men, 1 Black, 1 Hispanic, and 3 Caucasian. And because of the mix, we're not uncomfortable with the discussions. You know, we have the discussions and we're all comfortable. There aren't barriers about what we will discuss. And we just have the attitude that we will be diverse, and we are very focused on promoting people based on their skills rather than based on color or gender. We want to get the job done. We work, of course, with governmental entities, and many of them require a certain amount of our vendors to be MWBE certified. And so we keep track of that, how many of our vendors and what dollars we spend with our MWBE. And so we're just very conscious of it all the time. And as manager of my office, my goal is kind of like Shannon's, is to hire some minorities as attorneys in my office, because I'm the only woman attorney in my office, and I think we need some minority women in my office. And so that's my goal for the next step of hiring, and that's where we're headed on it. So I think it's just an attitude. If you keep that attitude about everything, have an opening, say, okay, what about, is there a minority that fits the bill?
Thank you for that, Barbara. I have a question about your vendor policy. And you talk about, do you have specific metrics around that, or is it more just that you want to try to do that, or do you have specific metrics that you want to make sure that you have the minority women-owned vendors?
We keep track of dollars spent per MWBE vendor. Does that answer what you're asking?
It does. I'm just wondering, when you say you keep track of dollars spent, do you try to keep it at half of the dollars spent, or you just keep track of it to know that number?
We try to keep it at, like, some of our contracts require us to keep it at a certain percentage of, or not require, but it's a goal. And so, you know, during COVID, it's been difficult because some of our processes have slowed down because courts have closed during a period of time. And so if the MWBE vendor was the one we utilized to do that process, then it's really hit our numbers. And so we're always, you know, looking for others. And of course, there's a cost analysis of it too. You know, you have to run a business. And so you try to find the people that do the best job, that, you know, will get it done timely and will provide you good value for what they're providing, but at the same time be an MWBE. So we have just hired a new company to do our title research, and it's really turning out well. They're doing a good job with it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and that, you know, from our perspective at the Council of Governments, in a lot of ways, it's similar to United Way from the standpoint of, you kind of have two buckets. I mean, we pass through and award a lot of grant funding, largely to governmental entities, but some nonprofits, through those calls for projects, through those types of initiatives where you're really saying, these are funds available to fill this particular need. Send us your proposals, and then we rank, score, and award the funds. I think it's challenging to incorporate, some sort of goal, because at the end of the day, you're kind of at the mercy of your scoring, your scoring criteria and what the needs in the community are that kind of rise to the top. So I struggle with that piece a little bit. It is easier on the the true vendor side. When we procure consultants or we procure goods and services, depending on the funding source, we may or may not have a DBE goal or an NWBE goal. But when we do, that goal is usually in the 25 to 30%, and we do an analysis every 3 years to develop that, and a lot of that goes into market availability, what types of services you're procuring. Professional services, it tends to be more difficult to find those types of firms with higher percentages. So there are a lot of criteria that you kind of have to take into account. But I think the part that I'm struggling with a little bit is, particularly when we're as United Way, when we're awarding funds, I think it's easy. If United Way is buying goods or services, I think there's certainly a way to incorporate some goal, some sort of, if we don't already have it, but some sort of goal, some sort of preference to highlighting DBE firms, MWBE firms, and trying to build that capacity in the community. And frankly, I think that maybe building that capacity is something that we should be doing. I think on awarding funds to through the community investment process, I think that gets tricky. Primarily, because then it's really looking more. It's not necessarily looking at the nonprofit or looking at kind of who's involved or who profits from that work, but I guess then the focus really is more on who the end recipient of the services is, and how do we, and I think to a large degree we have that. Can we improve it? Absolutely, and I think that's the purpose of these discussions today. But I think that should definitely be, I know in the past we've added kind of bonus categories, so to speak, on call for projects and RFP type grant awards, where that type of participation, some sort of diversity component is kind of a bonus, so that if a bunch of proposals are close, then kind of the tying mark would go that direction. So maybe that's a thought.
Well, I'll jump in following those two. It's probably good. What I do is I'm an engineer. I run an engineering firm, so it's very highly technical. And when you look at our senior leadership, it is mostly, it's majority Caucasian male. But if you look back to the people that are at the age where they go into leadership in a firm like this, back when I was in college, that's what was there. So what's available in the market. What we're seeing now is there are more women, and especially Hispanics, that are moving into our senior leadership in our company. So that is starting to grow. And I do a lot of the college recruiting. So what I'm seeing is, one, there's a lot of competition for those kids. And, I make offers, and you don't always get get your first offers. And it's very difficult to do that. So I'll talk one thing about the subcontractors that both Barbara and James mentioned. We are in the same field where we have those requirements, like a certain percentage participation by MWBE firms and things like that. I've seen that work very well, and I've seen that very poorly. Where it's worked poorly is, especially like with the COG, they put out very technical, sometimes like, Metroplex wide signal timing stuff for, to alleviate congestion. Some of the niches in there and some of that work is extremely technical, and finding that firm that has a technical competency to do that is difficult. Those firms are starting to develop, but they're not all there yet. So that's where the downside I have seen on some of those. But when you got your general civil engineering type and survey firms that we use as subcontractors, where I have found them is some cities, like, say Fort Worth, will have those requirements. There are subs I have met through Fort Worth that now I carry around on all my projects in all the cities, no matter whether it's Arlington or, cities that have no requirements whatsoever, or private development contracts as far as that goes, which obviously that's private sector money. So there's no requirements there. So it's kind of built that relationship between us as a prime firm and those sub firms that are MWBE firms that we carry beyond the limits of where we're required to. Now, when we were saying in the survey, where do I think that United Way needs to participate? I wish I could have hit the education button like 3 times, because if you want equity in an engineering, a highly technical field like this, we need to get, the demographics into the education system doing these highly technical degree plans. I got to be able to hire degreed engineers. What I've seen lately is that is improving, especially when it comes to women. I get more quality women candidates. Most of the women are my first offers. I don't always get them because they come across good to everybody, so they're getting a lot of offers. But there's more women than men that I'm seeing coming out of, like when I go down to A&M and recruit engineers. So that, I think that demographic is curing it, and that's going to push through the workforce in the engineering community. But if we're going to invest in the minority populations in places where we can really help improve that equity, I think that'd be great, because I feel like there's a lot of very intelligent people there that are just not going through the engineering field. And I'd like to be able to hire them. I'd like them to get educated and get the degree, and I'd like to be able to pick them up and hire them, because I think that'd be good for my business. But, we're beginning to become more diverse as a population, because I'm seeing more and more opportunity to make those hires, and we are. But I think education, that's where I feel like, for what I do, that's where I think the foundation is going to be. It's just got to be laid.
That's great. Thank you, Brian. And yeah, you bring up the really important topic of that pipeline of qualified talent. And that's, I think, something that everyone is struggling with. I know TCC has worked over the past couple of decades to really try to improve that pipeline. So good points for sure. All right, we have about 10 more minutes left for this discussion. I don't think I was really clear that after our break, we have an actual break from our breakout session, we're going to switch. So you all will be in the community investment equity discussion. So James, to your points about how the money is allocated, and that discussion will come up after the break. In our next 10 minutes, I would love to hear from you all a little more tactically about your individual organizations and what really, Brian, you hit on it a little bit, a couple of you hit on it. Jennifer, your comment was perfect here. Tactically, what are y'all doing as far as HR policies, as far as marketing policies? And I'm saying policies, for me, it's more important, what are your actual practices? How well are you using your policies? But in trying to really work for equitable solutions for all of your employees, what does that look like? And how can we immediately, in your opinion, how can United Way immediately try to put those in place internally? And then from the diversity committees aspect, from the board, what are some areas that we can immediately incorporate? So that may still be a little broad for 10 minutes, but if any part of that resonated with you, we would love to hear from you. And Carlo, we know you're the host today, but you are also a board member. So if there's something you would like to say, we would love to hear from you.
Sure, I'll chime in, based on, I think, what Barbara and what Shannon said just about it. I've never been more disheartened than 2020 for a number of reasons. At first, we can't talk about politics, right? You can't talk about it with people that you like or love. And then it became, you can't talk about race or equity. It's a lot of these conversations are just very uncomfortable. And one of the reasons why they're so uncomfortable is because we don't have them often enough. I think if we had them more often, we'd grow more comfortable talking about them. One of the initiatives that we started in our Rotary Club, which, as an aside, our Rotary Club in Fort Worth, it's one of the oldest and largest clubs in the world. And, we're known for being three things. And you'll laugh, but it's true. It's being pale, male, and stale. It's the group for old white men. And that is slowly changing now, which is really important. And one of the hallmarks for our club this year is to bring together these community stakeholders and leaders and business folks and whatnot and talk about, it's a series called Courageous Conversations. And we talk about those topics that we don't talk about: politics, religion, race, equity, inclusion, some of these really, really hard, issues. And I think that the more talking about on a larger scale, this topic, diversity, I think that, we could certainly have these conversations at our board level, or maybe equip some of our board members to take them to their respective organizations, take them to their respective boards, other boards that aren't having these conversations. The last thing I'll say is that the late Congressman John Lewis, he said something that hit right at the heart of this problem. He said, if not us, then who? And if not now, then when? So if we can't be having these conversations as the community stakeholders of our board of the United Way, leaders in Fort Worth, then who is? Who can we expect to have them? So maybe I think there's definite potential to use our board as the champions and maybe the instigators or initiators in a very good way to have these larger conversations. And then it's not just enough to talk about it, right? But one must take action and do something. But I think it all starts with the very, very beginning of just having the conversation on a very small level with a group of people that you trust, that's a safe space, and you can sort of go outward from there.
Great, thank you.
I was trying to raise my hand.
Oh, Tisha, if you want to talk quickly, but then you and I can talk offline. I really would love to hear from our board members, but go ahead. What do you want to chime in on?
Okay, I was just thinking around marketing, the marketing policies. I was going to say, I think it's going to be very important to be careful of images and language as we're doing our marketing stuff. So that's it.
No, perfect point, and a very, very real and important point. Thank you.
I'll actually, it's Jennifer. So it kind of goes to what Katisha was saying, is that as a city, like, we have a lot of people we need to communicate with. So like, it's very important that we reach those communities, whether it be through language or through the avenue or the particular medium that group, is interested in. And so we've found a lot of actual luck in different social media targeting, particularly when we're doing our census publicity, and then also through the COVID-19 publicity. And so we actually have a very talented communications group, but they're not very diverse. They're, I think, all white. And so, we are trying to hire for cultural competency, because we think that's a skill, just like being able to speak a language or knowing how to, film things or whatever. We need cultural competency to be able to go to certain communities and get and be more trusted than, like, say, if I walk in there, right? Like, I can't walk into all communities and have a quicker trust than some folks. If they have that cultural competency, it's very helpful, and it's very much a skill. But what we've done in the meantime is we're creating these groups of sort of stakeholders. Like, we did this in the Latino community, and we had a group of, I think it was 5 or 6 folks, and we would share videos with them and say, hey, push this to your network. So finding people within the communities that we're trying to connect with to do that. And then I would just say on contracting, Arlington has had a reputation and for not being very friendly to MWBE businesses, particularly the MBE businesses, so like your minority businesses. And we are working to overcome that. And what that requires a lot of times is direct contact, like having a call with the Black Contractors Association group and saying like, hey, we've got this coming out. How can we do better? So the businesses that are out there won't look for our business because of what they may think about whether we're going to hire them or not. So we need to work to overcome that. I have no idea kind of what the United Way's reputation is in contracting, but that's something that we're working to overcome. But it's a really personal, one-on-one, relational kind of effort to get over that.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Hey, Gloria, I'm not meaning to put you on the spot, but we only have a couple more minutes. Did you want to chime in with anything? I know her video isn't on, but I think she's there. So if you're just listening, that's great, Gloria, but we would love to get your expertise as well. There you are.
I'm here. So I think everybody brings a really great points, but I think it's important that as we continue to want to be part of to learn diversity. So I think learning the cultures will be really important as well. So that would be what I would like to add to that.
I like that. Thank you. All right. Any other our last 3 minutes, give Shannon and I really if you had a couple words about how you see our internal United Way marketing, HR, procurement, or from the board's perspective that you don't think has been addressed yet for us to capture, what would you like for our takeaway to be as far as how you want us to be moving forward with our, I'm going to say inclusion and equity initiatives, but all of the DEI?
I'll take a stab and say, I mean, I think, I think the good news is we're not starting from zero. I think it's something that we have focused on in the past and we continue to improve at. And I think, it is a continuous learning process and it's iterative. And so I think we just need to continue to look for those opportunities and take advantage of them when they come up.
Anybody else? Anything you've seen that you just go, oh, why is Beth not doing this? Or why is our diversity committee of the board not doing that?
I would just say the United Way's got some freedom and that you can set some goals for, different areas, probably not hiring, although I'm not an attorney, Shannon could tell us, but there are certain things you can set goals for. You have that freedom, particularly in contracting. I don't think it's ever a bad thing to kind of set that goal. Arlington's just done a disparity study, so we're going to be able to do that soon. But I think setting something to work towards, whether it's a certain number of contacts or communication with different communities and a strategy around that, or whether it's how much you want to contract, because then we could see like, okay, it was 25% and we're at 18. Well, what can we do to change that? So I don't think that, I think that might be something to consider for the board.
Barbara, I'm a new member, so I can't be very critical of what you've done or are doing. So I really don't have an opinion on whether you've been good or bad in the past. I've just seen, the annual reports and those sorts of things, and they appear to be good. But I'm sorry, I don't have other opinion on it.
That's all right. Well, before we get put back into to our break, I just want to thank you all for your comments and for your participation in this today. I hope your next session goes really well. And I think we will be asked to join the main group again in just a moment. Is that right, Carlo?
Yeah, if you'd like, Beth, we can dismiss everyone now to take a 10-minute break, and then when you
Okay.
come back, you'll be magically in the main session. Well, we're already in the main session, so
Okay.
you'll be magically back where we started.
All right, perfect.
Hi, everyone. I see that you have all been joining our Jamboard. And so we'll take just a couple of, maybe a minute or so. If you see that on the left of your screen, there's a sticky note option for you to just add to the Jamboard. This is just a fun little activity as we come back from break, just to answer the prompt so everyone can get to know everyone a little bit better. So the questions are, what living person would you like to meet? And when you meet them, what question would you ask? And again, this is just a little bit of a get to know you that we'll take just a minute or so for you to contribute. And this will be just some personal information that you all will know about each other as you continue your work. And once we conclude that, then we will then share the answers to the poll questions. So Carlo, I will leave it to you to determine when you'd like to begin sharing those. As you all can see, I gave an example of, I would love to be able to ask Michelle Obama what her greatest fear was when she left the White House and how she overcame it. And we may have to begin, for the sake of time, start sharing those poll answers, but please feel free to continue to add your sticky notes to this. This is something that where we can share the link later and ensure that you all have this information when that you can check out a little bit later. So Carlo, I think for the sake of time, we should go ahead and share those poll answers, and then everyone can continue to add to the Jamboard as we're sharing. Thank you.
You got it. Well done, Tracy. Thank you so much. I'm excited to use that adaptive technology and see what people come up with. It's cool to sort of use this as a different experience. We're virtual, we're online, but we can still sort of be in the same room. Imagine filling out sticky notes and putting them on whiteboards in a more efficient and effective way with better handwriting. That's the biggest win for me, at least, because I write on an angle anyway. So let's go through the questions to the answers. Now we're asking you to be honest about your grading. This will be, remember those self-grading spelling tests a long time ago and you mysteriously saw somebody with some eraser marks? So we're asking you to self-grade and be honest here. We're going to go through the answers to the questions. So the first question was, what is the mission of the United Way of Tarrant County? And you can see here that the idea that the top vote getter is D. And in fact, it is, I'm not sure because I don't have the answer on my list. So if anyone from United Way of Tarrant County would like to unmute and tell us exactly which of these answer options is correct, I will tap dance here until someone unmutes and tells us which answer is correct. So feel free.
D is correct.
Thank you, Michelle. I was testing you. I was testing the staff to make sure that they knew. So D, well done, everyone. All right, let's go to question number 2. Question number 2 was, when was the United Way of Tarrant County founded? And the correct answer is the one that was the top vote getter, and that was 1922. Well done, everyone. All right, let's go to question number 3, and that was the number of people served in a typical year by the United Way of Tarrant County. And the correct answer is B, 300,000. So well done, everyone. How we doing? Are we batting 500 at least, maybe? All right, let's go to the next question here. This is question number 4. Also dealing with a large number of people. How many people has United Way of Tarrant County served in 2020 since COVID? The correct answer was actually 550,000. That is remarkable, guys. That is like, that's almost half the population of the city of Fort Worth. That is unbelievable. And the need will potentially only continue to grow as unemployment runs out, as things may get a little tougher. So that just makes the work that we do that much more critical and that much more important. All right, let's go to poll number 5. This is about our esteemed board chair, James Powell. How long has he been on the board? Well, 2 of you were bold enough to say since the Cold War, but the actual correct answer is C, 10 years. So wow, James, congratulations.
Hey, and I want to know who answered Cold War.
I'll pull those results for you and send them to you privately later. So folks, if you don't know, if James makes it to year 11, they'll put a statue of him in the lobby of the United Way. So James, we're rooting for you, buddy. All right, let's go to poll number 6. And this is the year the Arlington office opened. It looks like we had a majority of people say the year 2000, but the actual answer, believe it or not, is answer A, 1979. It started way back then. So good on you for 2 of you who got that one right. All right, next, poll number 7. This is regarding specifically the direct service. AAA does not provide which of the following? And you all were correct. Majority of you were correct, almost a majority. Meal delivery. They do not provide meal delivery, which is the partnership that United Way did for the crisis meals. They fed over 105,000 people over the summer. So that was something pretty remarkable. Okay, number 8. This is how many chief executives has this organization had since its founding? And a majority of you said 1. And this is actually chief executives of female chief executives, I believe. And the correct answer actually was 2. Is anybody on staff? Can anybody tell us who the other female chief executive is?
Viney Chandler.
And do you know what year?
She hired me in 2003.
So she was a wise woman also, because she hired Faye. Well done. All right, and number 9, how many people of color has the organization had in its as chief executive in its history? And again, we have a vast majority answering. The answer is number 1. Does anyone on staff know for sure the correct answer? I have it as 2. Is that correct?
I have worked for both.
And Faye, who was that other person of color that led the organization?
That would be Viney Chandler.
Excellent. Wow. Okay. Well, very good. Anybody else? Has anybody else been around since Viney Chandler on staff? Just out of curiosity. I'm going to go on gallery view here.
Yes, me, Beverly.
Beverly.
Several people have.
Excellent. And who is the longest serving staff member that we have on the call for United Way? Faye, is that you? Beverly?
I've been here 23.
The longest serving on the call is Beverly.
Wow. Let's give Beverly a virtual round of applause. 23 years. That is amazing. Beverly, no doubt, if just since COVID, imagine that, if just since COVID, the United Way has touched 550,000 people, imagine how many lives have been touched just during Beverly's tenure of 23 years. Millions of people have a better quality of life because of the great work that all the staff does. And so just for all the staff, we just really want to thank all of you for being here, and your work is so appreciated. I know you all are overworked and underpaid, just like every other nonprofit organization practically. And so we just want to say thank you very much. All right, I am tap danced out, I think, for Leah, but I think what we can do is let's turn it over to Shannon. Are we ready to go with your next part? If we're ready to go with Shannon's
Carlo,
next.
Do we need to come up with our winners?
So yes, oh, thank you. So the fact that you were self-checking yourselves, anyone, you can either post it in the chat or just kind of wave your hand. How many of you got at least 4 answers right? Just kind of a wave your hand. If you got at least 4 answers right. All right, how about keep your hands up if you've got 4, and then we'll ask you to put them down and we hit your number. So Cheryl and James, I saw you guys got 4. Let's keep your hands up if you got 4 right. Okay, keep them up if you've got 5 or more right. Okay, 6 or more right. All right, so it looks like 7 or more right. 8 or more. Anybody get all 9 of them right? James, you get all 9 right? James, after 10 years, we expected so much more. It's that 11th year. Next year, we're going to get you that statue, James. So
That's it. That'll do it.
Very good. Very good. Okay. If we've got Leah back, then Leah, we're going to throw it back to you. And we are ready to keep on rolling. A well-oiled machine we are today, ladies and gentlemen. Leah, take it away.
Thanks for the pinch hit, and hopefully everybody learned a little something about the organization today. I don't know if Michelle is here, but she was going to hold up some samples of what our winner or winners were going to get. I can't tell who the winner is. Have we determined who the winner is? Let me see. Oh, hold it up again, Michelle. Oh, is there a bag full of stuff?
My files.
Okay, we'll make it more fun than your files, right? Perfect. All right. So if you got anywhere, let's say between 7 and 8 right, maybe throw your name in the chat, or we'll start with 8. If you had 8 right, put 8 right, 9 right, and your name, and then we'll go through and see who the winner is.
We'll have additional swag from the magical marketing closet to add into the bag.
Perfect. All right. So I hope everybody had a good time in their first session. We are going to jump right back into our next session. We know we had some people that had to drop off or take calls and things like that. So if their screen, if they're not on camera and you call on them and they don't answer, it could be they had to step away momentarily, but they'll be back. But we will ask the team at Meeting Squad to go ahead and send us back into our next session. And we'll see everybody back here at 11:30. So Meeting Squad team, take it away.
If you want to start, Chris, go ahead. You should be able to share screen. And I'm going to jump into another session. And then I'm going to go have a big glass of wine.
Good job.
Be back in a bit.
For me, because now at least my manager knew what he was supposed to do if I had a sexual harassment complaint or something like that, some sort of environmental issue with my group. And but after that, it was, okay, we have to follow this policy. The next best thing they did was, leadership from the top. Our corporation that's worldwide fired the second guy in line, but for violating our policy in that area. And that really, sent a message to everybody that you're serious. You can have all of these policies and all this training, but if your leadership isn't walking the talk and taking action, that they say they're going to take, it's not going to change. So I really saw another difference once he was supposed to take over the whole corporation. He was going to be our CEO, and they fired him. And I couldn't believe that they did that. I was just amazed that they actually fired him. And then the rest of the story is the third person in line took over, and that was Marilyn Houston. And she was our first CEO of Lockheed Martin. And my stock went through the roof, and I was able to retire early. So it was a happy ending to a long struggle. But and I know there's lots more to do, but those were the two things that in my career at that company that really seemed to make a difference. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Leah. Thank you for that overview of where we are as far as the United Way Worldwide Initiative. So exactly what is the Diversity Committee and what are we charged to do and who sits on the committee? Well, the Diversity Committee consists of a chair, which is myself, as well as at least 5 committee members who are appointed by the board chair. And our committee members includes James, of course, who is our board chair, me, Leah King is obviously president. One of our longest standing members is actually the City of Fort Worth Council member, Gina Bivens, along with Stephen Baldwin, who is a retired supervisor with Encore. And our board members include Carlo Capella, Joseph DeLeon, Marquita Deja, who is JPS Director of Diversity Inclusion. And one of our newest board members is Jay Jackson, who is actually the precinct administrator for County Commissioner Devin Allen. And directly from the bylaws, it reads, the committee shall work to establish the corporation as a resource for promoting diversity in Tarrant County. The committee is charged with developing policies, guidelines, and programs that support and provide a climate that fosters and promotes social interactions that support an appreciation, celebration of our differences. And because we know we obviously are very similar, but have different diverse perspectives that we all bring to the table. The Diversity Committee and Governance Committee, in conjunction, will also be responsible for nominating individuals to serve on the board of directors who meet these qualifications as otherwise set forth in these bylaws. And I will say the Diversity and Governance Committee has been very intentional about having diverse candidates that represent our board. We definitely want to be an organization that represents those that we serve. And so that's in board service, but also the services that we provide. These committees shall select for election at the annual meeting, and nominees are presented before the board of directors to have a slate of committee members to join as well. So now that we're on the same page about the responsibilities of the Diversity Committee, we would like to take a deeper dive. We would like to start ensuring that we're all on the same page in regards to definitions and concepts. This is really important because before we can establish United Way of Tarrant County as a community resource and promoting diversity within our community, we need to confirm that we have our own policies and practices in place. Then we will be able to be credible as far as effectively leading this discussion in the community. And so in a moment, we're going to split into 2 groups to focus in these areas, but we will first just give you a definition of what is equity. Equity is a term that we talk about a lot, but in times I'm in any discussions, people are like, well, you know, I'm not really sure what the true definition is. And so we did have a slide deck, but it says that equity is intentional inclusion of everyone in society. Equity is achieved when systematic and institutional and historical barriers based on race, gender, sexual orientation, and other identities are dismantled and no longer predict socioeconomic, education, and health outcomes. So just think about the article that we sent to you all in the pre-reads. It was about curb cuts. When people in wheelchairs and other mobility challenges advocated for years for curb cuts, once they became commonplace, the benefits were felt by everyone. Moms and dads who were pushing strollers of little kids, moving companies, and even kids on skateboards. This is the essential point about equity. It's not about the handouts or special treatments as echoed in the article. Rather, it's about an investment in the broader well-being of our society as a whole. And then you look at the other definition, diversity. It recognizes that each person is unique and groups of individuals reflect multiple dimensions of differences, including race, ethnicity, gender, class, sexual orientation, age, physical abilities, religious beliefs, political beliefs, and cognitive styles. And so you see before you, that is the definition of diversity. And a lot of times when we're trying to recalibrate and really talk about these crucial conversations, we first would like to provide just an overview of the two basic forms of definitions. Within the chat right now, I would just love to hear from you all. What role do you feel as a board member that United Way of Tarrant County we place into the racial equity and inclusion space? Many people say that we are leaders in this change effort, but what do you feel that our role should be as we guide staff, as we guide the diversity committee? What do you feel as a board member is the role of United Way of Tarrant County in leading for diversity, equity, and inclusion? And if you could just take a few minutes to put some of those comments in the chat, I'd just be really curious to hear what you feel our roles are based on, and that's being the champion for change. Yes, Leah, you said set the example and lead as far as what you feel some of our role and efforts are. Previous committee and actually the other group said, Brian, thank you. You said leadership and education. Tom said lead by actions and not by words. I totally agree, Tom. I think that is so important to where we are right now. And so other board members in the previous said that we feel like we are the leaders. We serve as the model for the community. We are the convener. I hear that a lot, that United Way of Tarrant County is such a trusted, confident in the community. We are reputable. And so I think through that, we have such a power to leverage this conversation and dialogue. And I always say that we need to take it from acknowledgement to action. And so I feel
of having data, which y'all shared in the beginning, the people that you've heard from in terms of what's the current breakout. We knew what our breakout was, not only from, kind of age and gender and ethnic and everything else, but also expertise, right? So is it in banking? Is it in finance? Is it in HR? Is it what is it? And so I think first having that data is important. And then to Patrick's point, the reason for it, right? Not just to have the data. And so as a board, we used that breakup and then we identified or breakout. We used our own knowledge when we looked at the grid. Who did we not have? And so when we went looking, we went very specifically looking for candidates. In my case, like I wanted younger people. So Carlo was actually, we brought on to our board. That's how I first met him, because somebody else helped me find Carlo, right? I said, I'm looking for people, quite candidly, who are not old, over 50 and white. We've got a lot of us on there and we need something different. We're not the only ones here. And so we did a very targeted outreach based on that. So I would say that to me, it's having the data, but at the same time going, we're going to have to be strategic. Hopefully we're not going to try and add 30 board members at once because it doesn't make any sense. How do we prioritize who we need first, right? And how do we bring them on well, vis-a-vis the needs and the gaps that we've identified in the organization? So that would be my kind of comment in terms of kind of a go forward for the board specifically, in terms of having that data, hearing from the others who didn't respond, and then being very rigorous about what are our immediate gaps to close, and how do we do that?
And I think the Arlington nominating committee for our steering committee did something very similar to that. And they had a metric and they said, here are our priorities. And I think they had spreadsheets and stuff like that, where we looked at the people that we had already on the board and what skills they had and what we needed. And I thought they did a tremendous job this last year.
Trials. To actually sit second and third chair on a capital murder, which they would have otherwise not had the opportunity to do. We actually, have told them, just take them to lunch. It shouldn't be where all the Black prosecutors only go to lunch and then all the white prosecutors go to lunch. And so we really had to break some of those divides within the office. And now we're going a step further because
focusing on whatever the employees want. So we added an LGBTQ+ one, we've added a parents at Bell one, we've added a people that care about health and wellness. So expanding places where people can feel comfortable and see people that look like themselves, as well as systemically looking at, are we being equitable in our processes, our compensation, our promotions, all of those things. So And our numbers have gone up, right? So we've gone in the past 5 years, our diversity has increased by 5 percentage points, which is actually a huge deal for a short period of time, with 7,500 employees. But having said that, this summer after the tragedy of George Floyd, when we started listening to our populations and our diverse ERGs, we invited the leaders in for listening sessions. What we heard from them was that their experience was not felt the same as non-people of color as the experience. So that while we've been doing all of these things, the experience that they're having is not the same. And in fact, we have a lot of work to do on those systems and opportunities, because there's a real perception and reality that they don't have the same opportunities to promote or move or get the stretch assignments or get the high profile jobs as non-diverse people do. And I think there's truth to that. So it was a startling and impactful conversations that we've had. And so our plans have on one side to do with continuing that employee experience, but working to make sure that it is felt, if not the same, then equally impactful to the people of color and our minority populations, but also to take a look at all of our systems and processes and make sure that we are taking the bias and making sure that we have opportunities for people out there, but then also communicating more about what we do, right? Like we do equity reviews at compensation to look for outliers, to statistically look where we have people that might be left behind, and we actually add money to them during the merit process. But nobody knows we do that. So we also have to take credit and publicize the things that we are doing. So I think it's a really interesting, and then I think a big challenge looking forward, especially with the majority of our folks in Texas, is how do we bring everyone else along the journey with us? Because we do have pushback, from people that say, well, you have an ERG for this and an ERG for this. Where's my ERG? And people see it as a pie. And if those people get this, then that's less for me. And we've got to break down those attitudes and figure out how to bring everyone, maybe not all the way along the journey, but at least a step forward.
Allison, thank you for sharing all of that and for your vulnerability in telling us that. I will go ahead and say on behalf of this group, let's please keep that, keep the information to ourselves, take the learnings with us, that we're not going to, go give Belle's information out. So thank you, Allison, for that. And Allison, I think your point was directly, if you did not have a chance to read the pre-read that Leah sent about curb cuts, please do so, because that really is enforced in what Allison just said. Equity and inclusion is not a pie, and we don't lose by someone else getting something. The curb cuts made it better for everybody. And that's really what we're looking at, is that when all of voices are heard, we're all going to do better. Everybody is going to improve. So I really encourage you to read that article and get the learnings from that. Darwin?
Well, as we were just talking about that, of course, we at Atlas Energy, we're a rather small company of 4,700 employees, but we're in 8 different states. And so one of the things that I appreciate about our company, not only do we have what started out as Diversity Council, we have Culture Council, but we also have a set of I guess, employee training opportunities that follow enterprise-wide Atlas Spirit goals. And these are goals that are set, and every new employee, as well as every existing employee, go through this training and build teamwork, and build a camaraderie, as well as learn about what everyone brings different to the table. And I think that's something unique about our company, or at least, I feel it is right now, because it's been a long time since I've worked anywhere else. But, to be able to do that as an enterprise, and it may be something we want to consider as a board, is setting some goals and sharing that with not just the board, but maybe with some of the other community leaders as well before they come on the board to see if they fit, or, you know, could have a seat on the bus, so to speak, you know, and willing to participate in what it is that we're have our goals set for.
Thank you. That's a good point. I am going to switch us to procurement and vendors now. This is something that we, I'll say we being certainly Shannon and Leah and I have talked a lot about, and seen how United Way particularly chooses our vendors. Are we actively pursuing vendors owned by people of color? What does that look like? How are we trying to build up organizations in our community? And do we, you know, what does that look like for us? So we're really curious to hear from you all what policies and practices your organizations have in place as far as procurement. What does that look like for you all?
Hey, Beth, I am not involved with that part in my company, but I do recall that when we were, and Dawn can probably back me on this, is that when we were looking at some of the RFPs for
overall, if we do start to accept RFPs from all organizations for all funding buckets, not just either say for systems change or things like that. So that's really what I'd love to spend the next 6 minutes talking about is, you know, what's working well with the traditional model. And especially for those of you that have been around on the board for a while, you've seen a little bit of both. You've seen us do investments with new organizations as well as with the, you know, the kind of the stalwart organizations. I'd love to hear from you.
I guess, Leah, just from my standpoint, I would wonder from you, what do you hear from other agencies? I guess, is there opportunity, you know, in terms of changing what we're doing, is there opportunities to help out other agencies that we're missing out on now? But obviously there's repercussions.
To identify organizations that have tremendous ability and effectiveness in those smaller communities with whom we'd never worked before. And so in doing so, from a geographic perspective, it definitely allowed us to do what we said we were going to do and who we are, United Way of Tarrant County. But also from a population perspective, we were able to get in more deeply with populations that we say are important for us to serve. So, so that said, just like you said, Brian, it comes with risks, right? If you have been funding someone for 60, 70, 80, 90 years, and then that goes away, you know, there's definitely a potential for blowback there, not, you know, if it's not managed appropriately.
Yeah, Leah, one of the things that we counsel our clients on all the time is self-awareness and constantly monitoring the environment in which they operate. And I think this is really good, especially when, and you and I have talked about this, and pretty much everyone, the board has discussed this, the very rapid evolution of Tarrant County as a whole, the population growth, the demographics changes, the change in age. I think most of us realize that Tarrant County is actually getting younger and not older. That presents a whole new set of challenges as well. I think there are risks when you begin to try to, you know, your building blocks here of the target, the bullseye. There are risks with a moving target, and so I think there are some opportunities and some benefits to doing the things that you have done in the past. But you can't be tone deaf to the changes that are going on around you, and so I personally think that United Way has done a really good job over the recent years of not just sticking with the formula that has worked in the past. And I think a lot of organizations, at least from what we see, really get bogged down in that, and it becomes a real liability that they see something that works and they continue doing it. So there are, in my assessment, there are two sides to this coin. There's the side of, hey, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But the other side is, you know, if you are not making those changes, if you're not constantly evaluating, you know, in the business world, your competitors are. And let's be very real. United Way of Tarrant County is a business, and you have competitors. And so I think that as an organization, I am certainly very pleased to see the evolution of the organization in a lot of different ways, not just from the business model, but kind of going back to our previous question about DEI and what does that look like? You know, because we as organizations need to look like and represent the clients that we're serving, no matter what business that we're in.
I think that's a really good point. And our survey that Shannon shared with us in the very beginning in terms of our board makeup shows that we definitely have some opportunity. And if we're going to be leading the discussion, then we need to be very clear and transparent on how we're going to do that. And so we're coming to the end of the session. We'll probably be moved back into the general session here in a moment. But I just want to thank you guys for your candor, for your input. It's very helpful. And I think that, you know, what we'll do as a staff is to take the input that you've given us and then compile this as well as what the other group shared with us and then bring something back on what the recommendations are. Because if we do make changes, we all know the best way is not to do kind of a knee-jerk reaction. We would need to do something that's a staggered approach so that we can mitigate any potential blowback and give time. We know what it's like to be funded for many years and then all of a sudden the spigot shuts off and there's not any advance warning and give you an opportunity to try to find those replacement funds elsewhere. So we don't want to necessarily have dependency, but at the same time, we recognize that budgets are generally built in advance, and the more advance notice that we could give if we did make any changes, the easier the ability for the organization to shift as needed. And then on the other question on the policies and practices and things like that, we too will take that back as staff and then put together what we think is going to work well for us, and then just make this as a dialogue so that, we can have just an ongoing discussion and learning from you guys as you might try new things within your respective organizations. And then we can share with you, what any feedback is of new things that we try within our organization, and especially as it relates to employee retention and just overall morale. Sound good? Cool. All right. Well, we are gonna take a break. We were scheduled for 10. If everybody's okay, we'll do just a quick 5-minute break. And then we'll all meet back in the general session. We're gonna have our training from Sean Lassiter coming up here in just a few minutes. So thanks for your input. Thanks for your insight. And we'll see you after the break. I can hopefully stop coughing by then too. See you. Hey.
Hey guys.
Good to see you.
Good to see everybody.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you about my name, and then I'd love to hear about you guys as well. My name is Leah, but no one in my family calls me Leah. They call me Michelle. Michelle. My name is Leah Michelle, and I reportedly have an aunt, Leela, and my parents wanted to be clear that I was not named after her, and so they started to call me Michelle. So if you ever hear somebody refer to me as Michelle and I answer and I respond, it's probably somebody that I'm related to.
So I'll go. I'm Carlo, and it's actually Carl. It's Carl Jr. But you know, when you have two people with the same name in the same house, and the phone rings, and you say the phone's for Carl, everybody gets everybody. My parents say everybody get confused. Well, there's two people in the house, and how hard is it to ask for the old Carl? So they just stuck an O to make it a little more Italian ethnic, and it sort of stuck because there aren't that many Carlos. But if you go to Italy, Carlo is like the equivalent of Charles. So there are a lot of folks named Carlo, but I tend to get Carlos a lot, as you can imagine, since we're close to Mexico. And occasionally, from some special people, I'll get a Carla. So really, I'm just pleased if you can get the gender right. I'll chalk that up as a big win.
This is Barbara. My maiden name was McComas, so it took forever for me to learn to spell Barbara McComas because they were both long, and I always run out of space in my name now. Williams, it's the same, and I always wanted something short and sweet and cute, you know, that had a nice little IE or a Y on the end, but never got it. So I got stuck.
Okay. My name is Petra, and my mother, my name means the world to me. My mother wanted to give me an unusual name, and there was somebody in her apartment complex named Petra. She didn't know how to spell it or where it came from or what it meant. But I feel like it has served me very well, especially in the career I chose. Because I worked for such a big company. I mean, when I first hired in there were 33,000 people at the one plant in White Settlement over there. But everybody knew who I was. And once you learn my name, I've been called everything. But once you learn my name, you know, you remember who I am. And that was really important in such a big organization. And when I was grown, I found out, or I guess in college, I met this is a strange story. I met some other Petras, and we were all in engineering school together. So, and at Lockheed, after I'd been working there a few years, there was another Petra female engineer who went to the same school I did. She had a different engineering degree than me, but her name was Petra as well, and she had red hair. And this is when you could count the female engineers on, one hand. So it was just an interesting experience. I wondered if having an unusual name gave me, the confidence to be different and go to work in a place like that where I was the only one, because I was used to being the only one by that time. But I may even tear up as I talk about it, because my mom passed away about 4 years ago, but it's something that she gave me that really has meant a lot to me for a very long time. And so that's it.
Amazing. Amazing. All right. I think we're going back to our.
Okay.
Okay, I had a great group. I don't know about you, but my group was amazing. Great stories. I want to kind of have some time if there's anyone who wants to share the meaning of their name in a large group. Maybe we'll take 2 people. If you want to share it with everybody, if you have a story that you would like to share. Anybody? You can do it. Vote for Petra.
I'll share.
Okay.
Someone else gonna share? No. So I'll just quickly share about Jennifer. Like I was telling my group, there are like 8 million of us in the world, because I was born in 1970 and we are everywhere. But my mother swears she never met another Jennifer before she named me, and then suddenly we were all over the place. So, but there are 2 reasons Jennifers were named, in my opinion, in that year. One was that's the book Love Story, and then the second one was an Everly Brothers song called Juniper Jennifer, and I was the Everly Brothers song, Jennifer. That's the story of my name.
I love that story.
As with having an unusual name, Petra, people often ask me where it came from or what does it mean. And as I was sharing earlier, I didn't learn that until I was in college, and I met some other Petras, and they were from Germany. And it's if you spell it correctly, it's Petra. My mother Americanized it. But it's the feminine of Peter. It means rock or stone, and very common in name in Germany. And if you've probably seen Petra on other things. I think there was a Christian rock group, and there's the city in Israel in Jordan that's named Petra because of the cliff dwellings and stuff. And so that's what it is.
Well, thank you, Petra. Kentisha, I think you had your hand up. Did you want to share? You're on mute. Okay.
Okay, sure. So my mother made my name up when she was in high school. And so you can't find my name in a dictionary, but the first part of my name, K-I-N, is Japanese and means golden. And the last part of my name, Tisha, is American and it means joy. So golden joy.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you. Thank y'all for indulging in my obsession with names. I just love it because that is like my first memory of just like being confused and also finding out like stories of my family at a different level. Another person in my group was saying that they found out that their real name in kindergarten as well. So kindergarten is very valuable to us knowing our identity. So we got to keep fighting for kindergarten. So what I do know is that, no matter what you do or what your name came from, what you do in life, the meaning of, or your passion, your mission in life will be connected to your name. So when people say Sean Lassiter, I know that they some way, some form probably relate me to something around racial equity. And so I started to really think about, why am I doing this work? Why do I think it's important? And what is my real mission to do this work? And so I believe that my goal in doing this is to help to increase racial consciousness in order to build a culture of anti-racism. And we're going to talk more about what that really means in a minute. But before we get there, I want to kind of center us around 4 agreements. As I've developed braver tools to have braver conversations, I think that it's important to begin with some type of, I call them agreements, because talking about race can go really bad really quickly. And it is one of those topics that we have been socially constructed to be very uncomfortable to talk about. Actually, it's been one of the topics that we were told we're not supposed to talk about, right? So I can remember even being little, being in the store, if I identified someone based on the color I thought they were, my mama would shush me. Like, shh, don't say that out loud. So I learned really early that talking about race is not really something you do in polite company. I didn't know why. I just knew that you don't do that. And so as I've grown up, there is a set of topics that I've been taught not to talk about: race, politics, religion, money, sexuality. And I'm like, oh my God, we've been taught not to talk about any of the things that really matter in our identity and who we are. And so then we wonder why, when we're like, 30 and 40, our conversations about race become explosive, because we never had the tools to actually engage with each other in the conversation. So part of my work is delivering these tools, frameworks that allow for people to come together around race, in that the conversation doesn't go really bad really quickly. Actually, you begin to engage with each other, you sustain the conversation, and you deepen the conversation using the tools that I introduced. And so the 4 agreements is one of them. And so the 4 agreement says that when we're in this space talking about race, this is what we will do. We will stay engaged. And I don't really mean like, don't check your email or don't like let your dog out if they're barking, like not that really kind of stay engaged. But like when someone says something that may trigger an emotional response out of you and you want to disengage, turn your camera off, look away, check an email, look through your purse to find that one thing you've been looking for forever, like that you just say, nope, I'm going to re-engage. I'm going to stay engaged. This one is the hardest for me to keep. I'm going to just confess. Because my all-time favorite thing to do is hang up on people and slam doors. When I get heated and I get triggered, I like to end it. I like to end it right away. And I like to hang up, and slam doors. So that's why I really hate these new like smartphones, because it's not dramatic enough. I need like the sound of the phone. I need the ringing and all that. But anyway, so staying engaged, even when I'm triggered by someone's comment or someone else's truth. The second one is to speak your truth, right? To really dig into I statements. Like speak your truth, not your mama's truth, not the person in your group's truth, but your truth, I statements. And I found this to be transformative because we's allow us to kind of hide behind in the shadows. But when you ask someone to replace the we with an I, it's a personal responsibility. And what you'll find is they don't even want to talk about it anymore. They'll be like, well, that's what we think, but I don't think that, So really forcing people to deal with their personal statements. The third one is that we will agree to experience discomfort. This conversation could possibly be triggering and uncomfortable for you. And I'm asking you to agree that you're going to just sit in it and you're going to stay the course, right? Even when you want to turn your camera off or just get up and leave or do something to disengage. And then the fourth one is to accept and expect non-closure. We won't actually fix racism or sexism or poverty today. We're not going to do that today and probably not next week, right? That we understand that this conversation today might have to end, but we're going to expect that we're going to keep coming back to this conversation. We're going to keep wrestling with it, dealing with it, and really giving yourself permission to not have a checklist, but to be an adaptive leader. So as your facilitator, my job is to create conditions in the room for all of us. Because what I know is that our muscle around talking about race is very different. Some of us have been talking about race since we were 4. I was a Black girl. I knew I was Black when I was 4. Talking about race with my family and talking about race with friends is something I've done for a really long time. So my muscle around race is pretty big, right? I can sustain more. But I also understand that there are some people who are just coming into the conversation about race, just really realizing that race is a social construct that actually lives among us, and their muscle can be kind of fragile. So my job is to build the right conditions in this room so that we can all come work out, right? That I give enough to the strong, that I don't insult you, but not too much to the fragile that I break you, because we all have to be a collective unit in this work. Okay. So I'd like for you to think about those agreements, think about which one might be hardest for you to keep in a space like this, and then really lean into that and challenge that throughout this presentation. So I'm going to go straight at it. We might as well dig deep. One of the questions I've been asked a lot since probably the pandemic is, why is race so politicized, Sean? And I really had to think about that, because I just had never really thought about that question. And then as I was doing research, what I came to find was, when has there ever been a time when race wasn't politicized, right? And so then I found this quote. It said, slavery was legal. People who freed slaves were criminals. The Holocaust was legal. People who hid Jews were criminals. Segregation was legal. People who stood up for equality were criminals. Legality is a matter of power. Government and laws aren't a guide of human decency and morals. And when I read that, it really shook me, because my father is he's retired now, a lieutenant of a prison. So not following laws and rules just wasn't even something I thought I could question, But But as I've grown up, I realized the people in power who make policies that affect people's lives are not obligated to do it and centered around humanity. They're not obligated to do that, right? And so I started to look at a course of laws that were specifically written for racially. And I started to think about the fact that these laws were constructed and passed by majority vote. And these laws included race in them. And I just thought that was like fascinating, right? So this one in the middle, we talk about Jim Crow, right? We've all probably heard of Jim Crow, that it was a group of laws and rules that Black people could not eat, drink, commune, anything where white people did those things. There could be no social interaction that was equal between white people and Black people, right? And so these laws were constructed in a way that created a human hierarchy in our society. It said that white people could attain things and have access to things. Black people, you can't, right? And that was a law, meaning that if you broke it, you were criminalized, right? You were imprisoned, you were punished. And so it was a strict law that created a human hierarchy in our country. And then I'll move over to the Juan Crow laws, which Texas would know a lot about. It's the same type of rules, same type of laws, but for Mexican and Spanish people, right? Creating a human hierarchy here and, really enforcing it. Also, the separate but equal, like separate schooling, segregation of education, right? These were laws that said Black and brown and white children could not go to the same schools. Students of color and white students could not go to the same schools. And so it was this segregation that happened, and it was laws, and it made it all the way to the Supreme Court. The war on drugs, very racialized in the 80s and 90s, where it was a war on crack cocaine, which really plagued the Black community. And you can see the difference now in the way that we handle addiction around opioids, that the war on drugs was specifically targeted to Black communities, whereas opioids really affect white Americans. And so it's dealt with a compassionate view now of rehabilitation rather than criminalization. And then this one, redlining, right? Redlining were laws that segregated our communities on purpose. So when people say, well, we're just segregated, we want to be segregated. Well, we have to think about the fact that there were laws put in place that drew lines that say Black people can only live here, white people can live here, brown people can live here. And you see it very differently in different cities. So when you hear people say, oh, that's Korean town, Chinatown, the Black side of town, white side of town, that isn't by mistake, right? It was created that way, and the banks helped to reinforce it by only giving loans to people if you lived in those places, right? And penalizing people if they cross those lines. And so when I think of redlining, I think about the fact that redlining is the springboard to all the inequities that we're still fighting today. So when we think about United Way and the fact that we're fighting to give resources to people to really break down the inequities in our society, what we're really fighting against are the policies and practices that happen during things like redlining, war on drugs, Jim Crow, and segregation. We're still really fighting those things, right? And so when we think about environmental racism and redlining, the lines that were drawn for Black and brown people to live, it was oftentimes by toxic places, right? By paper plants, by, things that produce things in the air or the water. And so when we talk about environmental racism, it means that they drew lines to say only Black people, you could only stay near this plant. And I was a child of that. I was raised behind a paper plant. And if you've ever been by a paper plant, it's horrible smelling. But that was my day-to-day life. Literally, I could see the pipes and the smoke from my house, and that's where we lived. And it was very segregated. And so just thinking about redlining and thinking about the policies that created this, that clearly named race, it makes me think the way that we begin to get out of this dilemma is that we really begin to transform people to see policies and practices differently and really create policies that address race in the opposite direction. And that's where equity comes in play, okay? So I think the way we do that is in this iceberg kind of analogy. I'm sure you've seen the iceberg 100 times, but I think about it in this way. Oftentimes our focus is on the tip of the iceberg. That could be the protests, the riots, the inequities in education, all the things we can see. And oftentimes as a society, we deal with the tip of the iceberg. We just want to chop off the iceberg, the tip of it, and say, oh, it's gone. Let's just get rid of the Jim Crow law. Let's chop that off. Let's get rid of Juan Crow. Let's desegregate. And all we're doing is just chopping off the top of the iceberg. But I was a science teacher. And I'm just a regular person who drinks ice water. You know what happens, right, with ice. Eventually, it's just going to float up to the top and create another tip of the iceberg, right? If we never get to the bottom of the iceberg and obliterate it from the bottom, we will continue to see the tip of the iceberg throughout our generations, our kids' generations, and their kids' generations. We have to eventually say, we're no longer just going to be a group of people who do random acts of equity, that we're going to systemically change the system by first addressing our beliefs and mindsets. Because beliefs and mindsets are the hardest to shake, right? And that work is really difficult because as a society, the checklist, the productivity, we have learned to just, if we chop it off, if we get rid of it, we can't see it anymore. That makes it better. And yet the mindsets and the beliefs still persist. So we're going to continue to get the outcomes. They will just continue to rise because we never deal with the beliefs and mindsets. So a lot of my work is around first transforming the hearts of people. I believe if you transform yourself, you can see things differently and it changes your behaviors and attitudes, which will eventually help us as a society get to a different outcome. So that leads me back to my why. So to increase racial consciousness. What do you think racial consciousness means? Anybody want to take a jump at it? What does racial consciousness mean to you?
Sean, I'll say, I think it's not only being aware of your own ethnic identity and racial identity, but also to be, that's not enough. It's our responsibility to be aware of everyone else's, because we've all been, I think we've all been awarded, for better or worse, different levels of respect and different levels of equity, either in our lifetimes and our forefathers and our progeny. So I think understanding that will help us understanding our role and better understand our role in the world and the others around us too.
Yeah, I think you said it perfect, right? The idea first to understand that race is a social construct, that it's not actually real biologically, that it is something that was created, a phenomenon that was created to put us in a human hierarchy, right? To know where we are in that human hierarchy and identify that, but then to look around and see how this is impacting everyone around us. So the awareness around race and how it lives is racial consciousness. And so that is my, major goal. And so one of the things that I do with people is say, if you want to begin to raise your racial consciousness, you should do two things. Start with two things. The first is to think about your first experience around race or racism, and then your most recent experience around race or racism. They call it the bookends, okay? So if you start to do that, what will happen is the more and more you think about these events and see the way that race lived in that moment, you will begin to create a racial autobiography that you can then share with people, right? And so I started this journey and I started to think about the first time I recognized race, first of all, and then maybe the way it was playing in my classroom. So I'm going to take you back to that kindergarten class. Not only did I learn my name, it's the first time I went to school, but I went to preschool, and that preschool was in my community. So everybody was Black, in Head Start. So I went to this, my kindergarten, and now it's really different. most of people are white. But my kindergarten teacher was at least 7'12". She was huge. And she was a Black woman, and she was regal. You could tell like she was the OG of the kindergarten teachers because everybody respected her. But she was very fair skinned, and she had a ponytail that went all the way to the ground, and she wore a skirt every day. And so it was just different. But this was a Black woman who was amazing. And so it was the first time I saw the contrast between everybody else's teacher is white, but mine is Black. And so I kind of started to think about that. But every Friday, she would do something incredible. You would come to the carpet, sit around, she had a rocking chair, and she would give you research for the weekend. And this particular Friday, she asked us the question. She said, I want you to go home and I want you to think about and research, how can a spider web a web and never get caught in it? And I was like, whew. I think that's why I went into science this day. That just, I just remember being like, that is the best question anyone has ever asked me. And so she gave you some parameters. You had to go home, you had to do research. And then when you come back on Monday, you have to talk about your research, give your hypothesis. And if it was the best hypothesis, you would get her red heart sucker. So I was going to win it. So if you were anything, like if your parents or grandparents was anything like my big mama, she had every encyclopedia there was. Okay. She would pay payments on these encyclopedias. And I knew how to spell spider. So I got the book, looked up spider, and I would solicit all my family members to help me answer this question. So Big Mama's house was a house that everybody went to after school. It was like the daycare. And so your mom would pick you up from Big Mama's house. And so I sat on the stairs, and as everyone was coming in, I was getting them to read pieces so I could answer this question. And so I got my hypothesis. I was ready Monday morning. So I get in class, sit on the carpet, I'm ready. And I look to the door, and here comes one of my classmates. His name is Brian Dennis. And here he is with his mama with a 3-part petition of how a spider can web a web and never get caught in it. And I remember being angry because I felt like he cheated. Like, did nobody say nothing about you could bring your mama? She told us to do. I just remember being so furious about it. And I just remember looking at Miss Floyd, and she didn't seem surprised, which made me feel like it was something that was choreographed, which made me even more angry. And so it was like he got to jump the line. You know what I mean? Like, because his mom was there. So they do the presentation, and Miss Floyd goes, "That's so good." And she gives him the sucker. And I'm angry. But she gets up and she goes, "You know what, though? I think somebody else might have the answer." So I raised my hand. And so I got up and I said, "I think a spider can web a web and not get caught in it because they web forward and never backwards." That's pretty good, isn't it? Y'all know that's good. And the second part is that spiders know their webs the way you know your home, right? You don't get caught up in your closet. I mean, some of us do, but most of us don't, right? And so they know their home. So they know how to like move around it. And she was like, "That's so excellent. That's so good." And she gave me a sucker. And so at the time, I just thought I got lucky. As I began to be an adult, I started to realize how intentional that was. And I think intentional in a lot of ways. She could have seen like the only Black girl, right, in class. She also would go to my church periodically, which was interesting. So my people could have been asking her, like, "What do you got Sean doing?" So she could have had some insight to that. Or she could have just noticed power dynamics in that moment. I don't know. But what I do know is that it transformed my confidence. It transformed the way I saw science. And it created in me some curiosity because of that. And so I think about that moment. I think about the dynamics. And when I became a teacher, what I noticed is that Miss Floyd did not put a standard on how you could show up. Brian Dennis was welcome to show up with his mom, and that was okay. And Sean could just do research with her family with an encyclopedia, and that was valued too. She did not put a value on how you showed up in her classroom. And so that really mattered to me. And so when I think about my racial consciousness, this is where I started, right here in that kindergarten class. So I will encourage you to start to think about yours and start to think about what did race have to do with that moment? And how did it affect me? And how did it affect people around me? And that can be something that could be hurtful, but I will encourage you to really dig into it. And I want to remind you that race is both positive and negative, right? That was a positive story for me. It wasn't a negative story for me, right? So knowing that race can work both for you and against you, right? So there are some parts of Fort Worth I know I can go to and I'm going to be good. And there are some parts of Texas. I went to North Texas one time to a polo match. It didn't work for me. You know, it just didn't work. And so I know there are times in which race works for me and against me. Also, race is inclusive of white people and people of color. We all have been wrapped up in this social construct that we don't like, right? And so we are all in this together. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions, all right? So they're all 33% each. I want you to think about, what do you think your nationality is, your ethnicity, and your race? I want to talk about these 3 vocabulary words because I think they're used interchangeably, but I really want you to know when I use race, what I'm saying. So just jot down, what do you think your nationality is? What do you think your ethnicity is? And what do you think your race is?
Sean, do you want us to do that in the chat?
Not yet. Just write it down to yourself right now. But
okay.
Yeah. But I'm going to ask you to put it in the chat in a minute. These are 3 small little vocabulary words that feel so complex and heavy, probably give you anxiety if you're going to get it right or not. And yet we were never taught this in our K-12 system, right? We were never really taught what these words really mean. And so, okay, let's start and let's see what you got. So nationality. So you can chat it. What do you think your nationality is? Okay, I see American. Okay, American. All right, so your nationality is your corner of the world where you hold your citizenship. It's what shows up on your passport. And what shows up on your passport is United States of America. And I like to be very clear about that, only because in this work that I've been doing specifically in Texas, when I just say American, it's almost a supremacist word, like we own all the Americas, and we don't. Like we can say American, but everybody else has to put the hanger before theirs. And so really to dismantle that for myself, I say that I'm from the United States of America or US citizen. That's usually what I would say. I often give the passport analogy, but I remember going home back to Big Mama's house and I was talking about all the work I do and I was giving them this little test. And they were like, first of all, that is super bougie. We ain't got no passport. And I was like, oh, I know I need to rethink that thing. And so I started trying to find another example for people who didn't have a passport. And I thought about, I did a 23andMe. Has anybody ever done a 23andMe? You know, where you find your like DNA. Okay, I'm not the only one who was curious. And so I found out I was like Nigerian, Sinhalese, and then I found like British and Irish, and I was super excited about it. And this year it was the Olympics, and I was rooting for everybody on my 23andMe. I was going to rack up all my points, right? I was rooting for everybody on my 23andMe. But what happens when they win a gold medal? They go to the podium, and what do they play behind them? Their national anthem, right? And what I realized, I don't know their national anthem. And so this is not like a, scholarly way to think about it, but this is just a regular way to think about it. If you don't know the national anthem, chances are you're probably not from that nation. Okay, it's probably not your nationality. But some people know all of the, anthems, so that might not work for you. But so there's just 2 ways to think about that. But ethnicity, what do you think your ethnicity is? Put in the chat. What do you think your ethnicity is? Okay. Yeah. African American is what I'm seeing. Anything else? Italian American. Yeah. Yep. European, Northern European. Yes. So your ethnicity is like your 23andMe, right? It's all of your cultures, your ethos, but it can be expansive beyond just naming like a location. Your ethnicity can also include things like, I'm Southern. It's a very specific culture if you're Southern. I'm also a woman, which is a very specific culture to be in. I'm a Black woman. That's a very specific culture. So your ethnicity can really be broadened based on like your experiences and your other identity tickers. And so ethnicity is usually that yummy stuff inside of us that we want everyone to know about us. You know, the way we prepare our food, you know, where we came from, how we dress, the music we listen to. Ethnicity is what we're really holding on to as a society. All right, so let's see race. What do you think your race is? Black, okay. White, white. Okay, so yeah, so race is who do people perceive you to be when you show up in a room? That is race. And that's hard for people to really wrap their brains around because it sucks. So when you show up in a room, who do society and people perceive you to be? Because however they perceive you to be on your skin, your hair, your eyes, that is the treatment you get. So you either get access, denied, or whatever. But it's how you show up in a room is how people perceive you to be. That's your race. This one is particularly hard for my brown Latinx sisters and brothers because they're like, well, I'm showing up white, but I'm telling you, like, I'm Latinx. And that's that dilemma, you know, around race and ethnicity, right? Because people perceive them to be white, so they access things that are given to white people, but yet they hold on to their ethnicity. And so this is one of those things that we just don't like because it has forced us into a box. It was socially constructed to put us in a human hierarchy. But it lives in a real way and it has real impacts on us. I saw somebody put Caucasian in there and I just wanted to give you a little nugget of thought around the word Caucasian. Caucasian was a term that was created by fake scientists, German scientist Blumenbach, and he was really responsible for this human hierarchy to try to justify it by science, but he wasn't a real scientist. And he said the Caucasian people were the most beautiful people in the world. And the Caucasian people are actually brown people that live in the Caucasus Mountains. So, but when white people in America heard this, they adopted the name Caucasian because Caucasians are the most beautiful people in the world. They made it in the human hierarchy, so they adopted this term. But Caucasian is really a term for brown people who live in the Caucasus Mountains. So it's not really real. It was something that was adopted for supremacy. So when a Caucasian man, a real Caucasian man came to America, he married a white woman and he took it all the way to the Supreme Court. He was fighting for the same rights that his wife would get. And Supreme Court said, no, 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 not that kind of Caucasian, right? It's a very specific type. And so I am, as a Black woman, have been kind of confused for a lot of different races, but one I've never been confused for is white. And the reason why is because there were very strict standards around what could look white: your skin, your eye color, your hair. So that's why when you see people with really fair skin, but they have like curly hair, people go, oh, that's a little bit ambiguous, right? It's because there's a very specific standard to be considered white in our society, right? So I just wanted you to know where I come from when I talk about race as it pertains to color, hair, eyes. But I do believe race can be broken down into 3 C's: color, culture, and consciousness, right? So we can talk about that, you know, at a deeper time. But I want to kind of tease out this last part of my mission: to increase racial consciousness in order to build a culture of anti-racism. Anybody want to take like a jump at what that is, anti-racism? What does that really mean?
So I think what I've learned it means is that it's not just being silent or when racist things are said, it's actively working against racism instead of just not doing racist things. It's that you're sort of actively working against when you encounter that in the world.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that. Yeah, so this is how I explain it to people in education specifically. Do we remember the anti-bullying campaign, right? This idea, was a lot of money poured into this, where, and still going on today, where it says kids could no longer be a non-bully. They had to be an anti-bully. They couldn't sit on the locker and watch someone be bullied because they would be faced with the same consequences as the bully. And so it was this idea that we enforced a certain mindset on children to kind of rat out the bully. And what we know in some cultures is that, you know, snitches get stitches, right? So we're not going to rat it out. So it was this conflict of if we're going to be an anti-bully or not. And so when I come into spaces with adults, I say, okay, we've tried the non-racist idea, you know, that I'm just non-racist. My hands are out of it. It's not really working for us, right? So at this point, I'm going to ask you to kind of begin to choose. Like, either you're going to be complicit in systems that uphold racist ideas, or you're going to be actively working against them to make sure our society is a better place. So James Baldwin says, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced, right? So really just saying we're going to look at it and we're going to deal with it. So these are my little 3 munchkins. This is when they were younger, but I like to think of them when they were little babies. But I think about the reason why I do this work, raising Black children, and specifically Black sons, and what that has really meant to me. And to think about their ability to live and be free in this society and be liberated in this society. So this is my why, and thank you for the heart. So I'm going to ask you to do a thing. Just look at these words, and I want you to think about what they mean to you. So just take a look at them, and I want you to think about what they mean to you. Now I want you to write down as many of those words as you can remember. I think it was like 13 of them. Write down as many as you can remember. You knew I was going to give you a test. It's the teacher in me. All right. I know we're working to get an A, but we'll see. Let's see how you did. Give me a thumbs up if you got slumber. How many people got slumber? Okay, a lot of people got slumber. All right. Why do you think a lot of people got slumber? It was the first word on the list, so good job. All right, what about night? Anybody get night? Good, that's excellent. Okay, bed. All right, sweet. What about sleep? Yeah. So why do you think sleep is in red? Anybody want to take a guess?
It wasn't on there.
Wasn't on the list.
It wasn't on the list. But why do you think so many people get the word sleep?
Associated with what the list is.
That's right, right? Because when we start making meaning of words, we make associations and we fill in the blanks. So, you know, I love science. This is a little brain science, little trick. But what it does, it shows you that your subconscious is always at work. When someone asks you to finish something or to do something, your subconscious will begin to make sense of what you saw and fill in the blanks, even if it wasn't there. So like, we just put a word on our paper that wasn't there. We convinced ourselves we saw it, right? And that's because our subconscious is at work. And so this is just like a little fun game, a little thing that I do just to remind you that we're all human. And we all, our subconscious and our implicit bias is what people call it, is always at play. And I call this sleepwalking. You know, when we're just sleepwalking, we're not really being conscious about things. We're just making our way around the world. And so when I think about race, I think about, wow, my two sons, just when they show up in a room, sometimes people will fill in the blanks about who they are. It won't matter that they're trilingual. It won't matter that they're straight A students. It won't matter that they're top athletes. That doesn't really matter because nobody knows that. People will start to fill in the blanks about who they are just because they are little Black boys. And so I think about the fact that I'm not my children's only teacher and that I have to release them to the world. And so my biggest concern as a mother is that how many sleep people will they come in contact with in a day, right? So when we were in the pandemic and shut down and my kids wanted to go to the park to play basketball, as a mom, I want to say, yes, get out, do something. As a Black mom, I'm like, no, because I don't know how many sleep people you're going to come in contact with from my front door to that basketball court. And so these are things that I'm constantly navigating when I think about the way that race is playing in our society. And so this isn't a new concept. Ralph Ellison said there are fewer things as dangerous as in this world as sleepwalkers. So this idea that we're walking in our unconscious and disconsciousness has really harmed the way that we show up for this work, especially around racial equity. So I want to ask you this question. How much of your life do you think is impacted by race? From a percentage, 0 to 100. How much of your life, you don't have to say it, don't put it in the chat. Just keep it for you. Okay, you got your number? All right. So the number you picked is your racial consciousness. Race impacts your life 100% of the time. The number you picked is your racial consciousness. Race impacts your life 100% of the time. Because remember, I told you race is both positive and negative. And so the first time I did this, if you're anything like me, I fought against it. I was like, nope, my number is 85. There are places in which race does not show up for me. And so I had a coach who asked me, well, just don't take my word for it. Investigate it for yourself and just ask yourself, what does race have to do with it? And so I started to look at those moments. One was, well, when I go to church and worship, God, like race ain't got nothing to do with that. Then I started to think about, well, who am I worshiping with? Who taught me about my religion? What color is he? Or why is he a he? Oh man, I started to dig into all of that stuff and thought, wow, race had impacted it and I wasn't aware of it. Then I thought about, okay, well, when I go to bed at night, I'm not thinking about race. Then I thought about, well, what am I thinking about when I went to bed that night? And I was really doing my checklist for my kids because I really messed up the last month they wear uniforms. And so on some Fridays, they wear their team shirt and I really messed up. I took them to the school with their uniforms, not their team shirt. And I was so upset because I just heard my mom in the background. You don't let your kids go to school not prepared. Black children don't get the opportunity to not be prepared. And I'm just hearing it. And I thought, what does race have to do with that? That my mom felt compelled enough to beat that into my mind, right? And then if that's never been something you think about, what does race have to do with that? Whether it's us backing out for school and I see a little crust and I pull right back in because guess what? You're going to wash your face. We're going to be late because I cannot allow sleep people to make perceptions about you. And so race is deeply embedded in a lot of my decisions. So what I'm going to ask you to do as you begin to do your work is to really shift from being colorblind to being color conscious. It's not that I don't want you to see me as a Black woman. Oftentimes people say, oh, Sean, I don't see you as Black. You're articulate and they'll give me all kinds of compliments. And I'll say, and I'm Black. I'm both that and Black. I have a good relationship with the word Black, right? It empowers me. So shifting from pretending of this phenomenon that happened in the 60s so we could all get along, and that didn't work, and it exacerbated racial inequities. I'm going to ask you to be color conscious. I want you to see me as a Black woman. I just don't want the negative meanings associated with it, right? So shifting. And this will be really quick because I know my time is winding down, but I really wanted to show you something because I hear this a lot, particularly with foundations and nonprofits. They really are in a conflict between, is race the culprit of inequities in our society or is poverty the culprit? And they ask me that question because they're wrestling with it. And so I want to show you just a little bit of some data throughout the decades. Glenn Singleton asked College Board to start to disaggregate SAT scores by race and income. And so this is the data we got. And so in 1998, this is how the children scored on their SATs, and it's divided by race and income. And what you can see is that no matter the income, right, Black students are at the bottom. You see white students excelling and Asian students. And then what really stuck out to me in this was that in white students whose parents made $20,000 or less outperformed the wealthiest Black families and students. So it made me curious, like, okay, I know poverty affects us, but I'm seeing an outlier right here. What is that really about? So then if we look at 10 years later and see if that changed, well, the scores went down because they changed the test. You know, it takes us some time. They also found another group called Native Americans. This should show you how race is constructed. It's just whoever's in power and acknowledges what race or what box we can check, right? But you can look and you will see the same pattern. Black students at the bottom, Asian and white students excelling, Latino students right there, just kind of, and then the poorest white students outperform or equal to the wealthiest Black students. That's a decade later. Let's go 10 more years. 2011. You got more categories. Income has increased overall. Kids are doing better. But what do you see? The same pattern. Black students at the bottom. Asian white students excelling. The poorest white students outperforming the wealthiest Black students. So, does poverty have a place in it? I think so, for sure. It impacts us all. But what this data, disaggregated by race and income, began to really reveal to me when we talk about student achievement specifically, is that race is still the culprit in this. Race somehow is still creeping in, you know, to our academics, into our education system, into all these other things. And so I pulled up, you know, another district really close by you, and you'll see the same thing. So it's the national problem, a state problem, and a local problem. It persists throughout. I just pulled reading because, you know, we're really focused on literacy. So you see the same things. 8th grade, same patterns. High school, same patterns. Yeah, this is a lot. I can show you so many districts that I work with. It's the same pattern. So it's not even just unique to this district, right? And so my encouragement as you do this work, and I think I heard this in the earlier work that you were doing, is how can we take our random acts of equity that we're trying to do to help society and bring it to a systemic equity transformation plan that is systemic throughout the organization, that addresses racial inequities. And why do I say racial inequities? Because in all the other inequities, whether we're looking at disability, sexuality, gender, if you take those groups and you disaggregate it by race, what you will find is the darkest of those groups are doing the worst, right? So people with disability, if you disaggregate it by race, the darkest people of that group are getting the least amount of resources, dying at an extraordinary rate, and being overly imprisoned. If we're talking about adults, schools, you know, we know the trends. If we look at gender and you disaggregate it by race, you see the same things, same trends. So really thinking about how can we package these random acts and put them into a systemic plan so that we can begin to change the culture of our environment. So I asked a lot of educators, what do you think the causalities of that data? Like, why do you think the data keeps showing up the way it does? And this is the top 4 things that people say. Well, I still believe it's poverty, Sean. And then the second one is, oh, it's family involvement. The third is, well, it's a language barrier. And then the 4th is, well, it's mobility, like transient, people moving around. And so I asked them to take these 4 causalities and to see if their subconscious was at play, to see if race is really what they're trying to say in this moment. So I'm going to do that with you. So if you close your eyes, if I ask you to close your eyes and imagine a family in poverty, what color are they? Don't say it out loud. But I'm going to ask you, I wonder if race kind of crept into your definition of a family in poverty. Don't know, maybe. When you think about family involvement, if you close your eyes and you think about what families do you perceive to need help being involved or to being engaged, what color are they? And what do you perceive the families who are always engaged? What color are they? And that race somehow creep into your definition of family involvement. And then I want to ask you, who decided what family involvement looked like in the first place? Right? Who set the standard for how families get to show up? Right? Because I'm a working mom and my mother has to do I have a village, so, and I'm a single mom. So my mom does a lot of the work for me. And so people could fill in the blanks that I'm not an involved parent and I don't care about education because I'm not there as much to pick them up from school, right? So who gets to determine what family involvement looks like? The third is language. When you close your eyes, what color are those families who you think have a language barrier? And then I'll ask you, when is language an asset for some and a deficit for others? When is learning 2 languages called bilingual? And when is it called ELL? And what does race have to do with that? I thought about a board meeting I went to where they were about to sunset an immersion school here in Fort Worth. And a student who came from the one of the schools where their second language is English, he was doing a report and he was really struggling through this report because his first language is not English, it's Spanish. And I saw people giving a lot of sympathy, trying to, encourage him. And then he sat down. And then a little girl, a white girl, she had 2 pigtails, she was so cute. She got up and she did her entire speech in Spanish. And when she was done, she got a standing ovation. And what I thought about in that moment was, if he knew he could speak his native language and get praised for it, do you think he would have done that? And so it just makes me think, when is language an asset for some and a deficit for others? And then I think about mobility. People say it's because kids move around apartment special to apartment special. Well, when you close your eyes, what kids do you think move around from apartment special to apartment special? So it makes me think about, are we as adults looking at children and do we receive them differently based on what we think about them, right? Maybe you're thinking about mobility in terms of military or the ambassador's children, because they move around from state to state and sometimes country to country, and they tend to fare well in this society. So what it makes me think about is, are children being received differently? If a kid is coming to your class or your school from an apartment special, do you treat them differently if you knew the ambassador's son was coming to your class? Will the access to resources look differently? And we spend a lot of money, and United Way supports a lot of organizations that work really hard to begin to align education in this county. And if we're putting that much money into it and it's that focused, you tell me that a Black kid from the East Side can't move to the West Side and without missing the letter G or really critical sight words, right? Like, it's got to be something about the way adults show up for kids. And so I'm just asking you to think about, when you think about causalities of education achievement or poverty or gender programs, ask yourself, is it these causalities for real, or is race somehow influencing the way you see those words? Just to begin to think through it. So, this is the end of my, speech, because I know I've run over time and Leah's probably going to kill me. So, but I just wanted to take you through this to begin to think about, how can you build a braver space within United Way on the board as you work there to really look at race as the culprit to accelerating the inequities that y'all are fighting so hard to dismantle. Okay, so thank you, Leah, and I'll pass it back over to you.
Oh my goodness, Sean. Thank you so much. Yeah, for real. That was amazing, amazing, amazing. And I'm just gonna put you on the spot right now and ask you to come back to be with us again. We will work out the details and logistics, because we know we just got the tip of the iceberg of what you normally do over the course of days, weeks, and months.
Yeah.
and we need you. And this has been really helpful. So thank you.
Thank you. I got you back anytime.
Great.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Bye.
you so much. Bye, Sean.
Bye.
So you guys, we're coming to the close of the day. So I'm going to turn it over to James to wrap us up.
Thanks, Leah. And I know we've run over, but hopefully you all agree that was time well spent. I know all the conversations, particularly Sean's presentation, give us lots of great information and a lot of reflection that hopefully will make us all better board members as we continue to move forward. So I know we have a few questions here and kind of discussion about takeaways, but in light of the time, maybe we could just send those out via email and ask that hopefully you found this time well spent. I know I did. I'd like to thank Leah and staff for putting this together. It looks seamless, but there's a lot of work that goes into all these presentations and setting up the discussion. So thank you very much to Leah and staff for putting this retreat together. And thank you all the board members for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here today. So with that, I'm going to give you back these last 10 minutes and hope everybody has a great rest of the day and a great weekend. And we will be in touch. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Thank you.